organised and funded by three men who played in England's first ever Test cricket match. Opening bowler Alfred Shaw, opening batsman Arthur Shrewsbury and captain James Lillywhite. The 1888 Lions squad then, made up of 17 English, 4 Scots and 1 Welshman and a Northern Irishman, took a 46-day boat trip to New Zealand before heading to Australia. The Lions weren't alone on the boat. Also on board were 300 stoats and weasels who were brought over to eliminate New Zealand's rabbit problem. The first ever Lions captain, Robert Seddon, died of drowning midway through the tour while sculling on a river. Andrew Stoddart, who was another of the cricketers there, took over and was the star of the tour. The next one was the first to get official recognition from the RFU against the newly formed Springboks. Although the Lions won the series and beat the Boks again 5 years later, in the 12 series since in South Africa, they've only won 2. New Zealand has proved an even tougher hunting ground, just the 1 series win for the Lions in 11 attempts, which came in 1971. And then there was that nail-shredding drawn series in 2017, only the second in Lions history. Only once have the Lions clinched a series after losing the first test, 1989, when David Campese's infamous ghost pass was pounced upon by Ian Evans. Before World War II, the Lions had a dark blue strip, which on the 1930 tour forced the All Blacks to play in all white. So in 1950, the iconic red shirts, white shorts and blue and green socks combination was born. It remains the symbol of the greatest alliance of adversaries in all of sport. To borrow the phrase from Jim Telfer, the Lions is Everest.
Hello, very good morning to you. It's Sam Matterface and Simon Jordan. We're here on talkSPORT till 1 o'clock this afternoon. So the Lionesses leave it late again. They beat Italy by 2-1, reached the Women's Euros final once more. But with the level of performance being so low, is it hard to see how they'll conquer either Spain or Germany in Sunday's final? Meanwhile, Crystal Palace fans travel to Switzerland to protest at the headquarters of UEFA and CAS against their Conference League demotion. What will this achieve, and does their appeal, which is now official, have any chance of being successful? Plus, Johan Vista leaves Brentford's pre-season camp amid transfer speculation. Will Marcus Rashford find a new lease of life at Barcelona? And we'll be joined by Live Golf's Lee Westwood and Henrik Stenson on the show this morning. This is Sam Matterface with Simon Jordan, and we're live on talkSPORT.
100% engagement. Jim White and Simon Jordan on talkSPORT.
And you can get involved in the show, 03717 223344 81089 on the text, and you can WhatsApp us 03717 223344. And we're available on our connected TV app and on YouTube, where you will see that Simon is once again looking resplendent. I feel a little bit dishevelled this morning after watching that game last night. It was another roller coaster.
Yeah. I mean, I watched it. You've got to give credit for a side that can keep pulling results out when their performances don't really merit it. So you've got to give a lot of credit for the spirit to get themselves into a situation where substitutions are made. The two girls come on, Michelle and Chloe, and they do their jobs and they're effective. And the questions will be asked of people, why aren't they starting? But that's Serena's way of setting up, and she uses substitutes. And what's really refreshing to hear is professional footballers not having any complaint about where they play, how they play, and when they play. And I like that. And that might be just an indication of the evolution of the women's game until they get to a point when they're paid lots of money and they can all become prima donnas and then start jumping up and down telling people what they expect. But, the second half, Italy must be kicking themselves because the game was in their hands. I mean, England were better in the second half than they were in the first half. But the interesting thing was the only ball of quality that I saw put in the second half, a goal came from it. I watched, sort of kicking the floor and kicking the screen and kicking chairs around me, thinking, can't you deliver a ball in a box? Even to the point where you've got a corner before you've managed to equalise in the game and you kick the ball straight out. But they've got through. And however you look at it, however you cut it, the methodology of getting an outcome is by any means necessary. That's what Don Charles will talk about in terms of boxing. And obviously it didn't work out for him on the weekend, but notwithstanding that, in this instance, they've got through. Now, it could be said that in a high tide, all boats rise. And what I mean by that is you start playing opposition that you're not expected to beat, like the Spanish, you might find the level of England's performance rises like it did against the Dutch a little bit.
Yes. Well, let's hope that's the case, because they were dreadful first half. Again, the defending for the first goal was really poor, much better in the second half. Tash Dowie actually said on talkSPORT commentary last night, after the Michel Agyemang rescue act, England will go on and win this. You knew it was going to happen, but boy, did they make hard work of it. And it was like they were trying to squeeze every ounce of drama out of it in the end. And I suppose that, in a sense, made more of an event to it. Let's speak to former Lionesses forward. Summariser the last time we did the European Championship with me at Wembley. Leanne Sanderson joins us on the show. Hi, Leanne.
Morning, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Well, it was a remarkable night, wasn't it? It was drama for the ages. Scarcely believable how the tournament is panning out for England. But you have to credit the resilience of this team. They don't seem to know when they're beaten. And I'm not saying history's repeating itself, but I think 3 years ago, you and I just kept saying the words, where are Russo and Toon? Those used to be the big changes. Now, where's Michelle and Chloe?
Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable, really. I'm hanging on to my voice for dear life. And, we were messaging last night, weren't we, Sam, about the game. Be honest, Serena got away with one. I always say in Serena we trust, but I think you have to ride your luck a little bit sometimes in football. I think you make your own luck in life. But I do think, she looks like a tactical genius at times with regards to bringing on these substitutes. But bringing Michel Agyemang on in the 85th minute, I was going absolutely mental. I was thinking, what is going on? These subs clearly needed... I mean, it's easy saying it from this side of the line, Sam, isn't it? With regards to who should be playing and all those types of stuff. But managing at the highest level is a different kettle of fish. So, I'm just so proud of the team. I agree with what Simon said. The resilience has to be said. And we said it in the last World Cup in Australia and New Zealand. The team wasn't playing well and we managed to get to a final. So those are the characteristics of a top team for me. And I think Serena's laid the foundations. I mean, I don't know if you've noticed this, but Serena looks really startled herself. Yeah. She looks quite shocked at times. But
also the surprising thing is the way she's celebrating when the goals go in. It's like a different person, isn't it? She really over-celebrated almost with that goal went in last night. It was almost a sense of relief for her too.
Yeah, and she looks quite shocked, doesn't she? But like I said, I think when you lay down the foundations, all those meetings they have off the pitch, all those types of things that I personally didn't particularly like when I played for England, because we used to have a meeting about a meeting. But I always say I wish Serena was there when I was there, because I just think she's a top manager, top coach. And I mean, Michel Agyemang coming on, 19 years old. 4 games, 3 goals. She's not even started her club career yet. Arsenal sent her out on loan to Brighton and she's coming back an absolute hero. It's just unbelievable. And Chloe Kelly, I mean, missed the penalty but finishes it in the end. And yes, we did get away with one, but we're in the final and that's all that really matters, really.
I think the key thing to point out here is that England aren't performing well, but they haven't been playing well for a little while, not consistently well, Leanne.
Against the Dutch, weren't they?
They were good against the Dutch, but I mean, I'm talking going back, and you just mentioned it about 2023 as well. Where is this coming from, and why aren't they able to be at their free-flowing best and as good as they were 3 years ago? What's happened?
It's weird though, isn't it? Because we can sit here and say that, but we're in another final.
Yeah.
The Lionesses have made the last 7, semi-finals. Serena Wiegman has made the last 5. It's what she does. And I do believe when you lay the foundations off the pitch and you have all those things, I mean, some coaches prefer to kind of overcoach. For me, the coaching goes on at the training ground. And then when you get to the game on the pitch, that's when you let the players kind of do what they need to do. She's not one of those coaches that kind of is on the sideline, going absolutely mental, like coaches like Mikel Arteta, is she? She's one of those coaches that's very calm usually. But I do think, Italy made some weird substitutions as well. I want to come and talk about them a little bit. I mean, Cristiana Girelli picked up that injury. Obviously, she had to go off. Bonancia, Sofia Cantore went off. Now, Andrea Soncin, I think, has done a fantastic job at Italy. And if I was Italy today, I mean, we saw at the end of the game, this football, isn't it? It's what happens. You can be the best team sometimes. Tactically, defensively, I thought they were exceptional, Italy. But at the same time, individually, we got there in the end. We brought on the substitutions, and I have no idea how we did it, but we did it. And yes, we haven't been playing well, but we're in another final. It's so weird, isn't it?
That's the mentality thing, though, Simon, isn't it? You know, it's that you talk a lot about resilience a lot.
Yeah.
And the reason that they can get out of these matches and these tight spots, even though they aren't playing at their very best, is because they've become an elite mental
there's also
team.
an inherent belief that underpins the fact they've got. I mean, there's good generals and there's lucky generals, and I would suspect that Serena falls into both categories, because by Leanne's own assessment, you put Michelle on with 5 minutes to go, 6 minutes, 7 minutes to go. Okay, some injury times, maybe 10 minutes to go. You really are, it's a shot to nothing sort of thing. You'd expect them to be coming on after 70 minutes if you're not creating the kind of outcomes that England clearly weren't creating, throughout the second half. I look at it and say, without being mean-spirited, I think the opposition have a part to play in England's ascendancy, because the Swedes should have closed the game out and they should have won the penalty shootout.
Well, they made odd substitutions as well.
And the Italians, had a chance a couple of minutes before England equalised that would have put the game out of sight. And you have to look at that and say, well, some of the opposition's contribution have allowed England to get themselves out from underneath, because these games should have been closed out. The Swedes should have closed the game out. It should have been job done for them. And so you have to look at the level that they're playing against. Now we'll see how this luck and how this resilience plays out when they play against a side, like I said, that on paper they might be expected not to beat. Now, I think they'll rise. I think you'll see a level of performance because A, it's a final, and B, the opposition will demand it of them. Now, whether that can produce an outcome, I wouldn't bet against England winning this tournament, and I'm not really overly concerned about the poorness of the performance. We saw England's men get to a final when we were dreadfully concerned by the performances that we saw because they were so drab. I mean, England's women have put in performances in this tournament that have given us something to hold on to. Very rarely did the men, besides the second half of the game against the Dutch, give us a lot to handle. Well, certainly the first half anyway. In the semi-finals, give us much to hang on. So I think there should be a lot more to be upbeat about than downbeat.
Yeah, well, certainly they've managed to get to the final of the European Champions, semi-finals of the 2019 World Cup, final of the 2022 European Championship.
And Serena's record is unarguable. And her two successes prior to that, or two finals prior to that. You can't just categorise it as... I don't think she's surprised or shocked. I think she's bloody relieved by some of the outcomes. I think that's the exuberance or the jumping around that you're seeing. But this woman's record as an elite coach in women's football is unsurpassable at international level, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Changes were made last night, Leanne, and there will be changes, or will there be, for Sunday? What do you reckon she should do here? Left Jess Carter out last night. Chloe Kelly's, she's not just knocking on the door, she's hammering it down, isn't she, to get into the first team?
Yeah, I don't think that substitution at half-time was a correct decision for Beth Mead to come into the game. I know we won the game, but I think Chloe Kelly should be the first one off the bench. Let's be honest, guys. I mean, the team looked tired, didn't they? They looked dead on their feet. I mean, fair play to Lucy Bronze. She could barely run from minute one. And I could see she was just trying to get through the game. She did a fantastic job. Leah Williamson didn't look fit for me. She's leaving the game the other day on crutches in a protective boot, and then she's out there, 3 days later. So I think the rest is, and Ella Toon, a lot of them look tired. Lauren James looked like she picked up an injury. So for me, I think Chloe Kelly has to come back into the team. I feel for Jess Carter, but I think apart from all the other horrible stuff that's going on, her performances haven't been good enough. So Serena did quite a bold thing there and taking her out of the lineup, because people are saying it's due to the other horrible stuff that's been going on. No, it's not. She hasn't been good enough, and that she doesn't need me to tell her that. So, Serena did a pretty bold move there. I expect her to go with the same back line. I can't believe Maya Letizia is not getting a look in at all, because for me, she should be the next replacement. Esme Morgan did a relatively good job, but I think Serena will keep the same team, personally, because obviously Serena's very stubborn in her team selection, and that's also fine. But I do think Chloe Kelly, for me, has to start.
We had a rebound penalty scored last night. England won a semi-final. With Harry Kane scoring a rebound penalty against Denmark in 2021. England have gone through in a semi-final with a rebound penalty last night. They're going to take it out of the laws of the game. Me and Simon disagreed about this earlier in the week. I said I couldn't believe that there was any point in doing this. That might be the last ever rebound penalty we see in international tournament history.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't surprise me, though, because they're trying to change football left, right and centre. Ultimately, they have to get referees that can actually referee the game, first and foremost, instead of making up these completely ridiculous rules out of nowhere. But at the same time, I think it was interesting because Ella Toon was following in, wasn't she, Chloe? I mean, the penalties at this tournament have been crazy. 50% of them have been missed. It is absolutely nuts what is going on. But again, you know, for me, the rules, they keep changing them, chopping and changing them like the wind, and it makes no sense. So if it's the last ever one, then I'll take that.
One word, who wins the Euros?
Oh, head and heart, I think Spain. I think Spain will beat Germany. I think Spain, but I hope the Lionesses, obviously. But I can't be biased all the time.
Leanne, thank you very much for coming on. Appreciate that. Leanne Sanderson joining us to reflect on last night's dramatic win. England have reached...
Leanne, very balanced, wasn't it?
Yeah, England have reached the final of all the last six, which is very good. Last six men's, women's and under-21s European Championships. I mean, that's amazing, isn't it? Reached the final of the last six men's, women's and European under-21 championships. How much credit do the FA and St George's Park deserve?
Well, I think that's how much credit does anyone deserve for success. It's all shared, ultimately. You know, we've got a nation that's got the richest leagues, both in domestic football and across the sexes. So why shouldn't we be producing elite teams? What I've noticed, and going to how Leanne was speaking, is I find it quite refreshing. I'm not a student of the women's game, and I've been critical of it in the past, predominantly because it gets weaponised and used to bash the men's game about what men's game has done to women's football and how it should cost represent and how it should cost pollinate financially. But I've listened to her and Courtney and Leanne speak with a refreshing candour that is often not in the men's game about how this player could be left out, that player could be played, what the manager's doing. And I thought that was quite interesting to be not just toe the line in terms of, well, you know, I want England to win, so I'm going to say England will win. She thinks Spain are going to win, so she's prepared to say it. And I think both her and Courtney have been really good in the times that I've listened to them.
Yeah, brilliant. That's why we hire them. Because they're the best. And Tash Dowie was excellent last night alongside Joe Shannon on commentary in the live coverage that we brought you last night on talkSPORT. And if you do get the opportunity, there is a rival radio station that have a video of one of the moments of absolute joy last night. And in the background, you can see our very own Adrian Durham getting just a little bit overexcited. It's one of the best videos I've ever seen. And on all of our WhatsApp groups, it is doing the round big style today. He loses his mind. Some Crystal Palace fans are losing their minds as well. They think they're going to be kicked out of the Europa League. You're listening to Matterface and Jordan on talkSPORT with Soko Builders Warehouse. It's where the trade go. We'll talk about their appeal to the Court of Arbitration for Sport next. It's talkSPORT. It's Sam Matterface with Simon Jordan today, and Crystal Palace have submitted an appeal against their demotion from the Europa League and into the Conference League. The appeal is against UEFA, which issued the punishment. French club Lyon and Premier League rivals Nottingham Forest. The Eagles were punished for breaching multi-club ownership rules as American businessman John Textor owned a stake in the club and is the majority shareholder of Lyon, who also qualified for the Europa League. It was a bit of a technicality, really, because they didn't do some paperwork before March the 1st. A decision, though, is expected on or before the 11th of August. But the draw for the Conference League playoff, which someone's got to be in, takes place on the 4th of August. Look, I mean, Crystal Palace have got to throw the kitchen sink at this. But the timing of the decision is a concern, isn't it?
Well, it is what it is. It's UEFA that have got to find their way through the scheduling of the fixtures. Palace can still buy players, can still focus on being in Europe, because we know that the commercial returns, if you go into the Europa League, there's a distinct possibility that Palace might get to the round of 16. And it has a certain amount of revenue. There's a distinct possibility if Palace go into the Europa Conference League that they might get to semi-finals or final. And so with that in mind, the two revenue streams are comparable. If you go out,
do you think so?
Yeah, I know so.
Because I did a bit of the maths this morning.
So
on
did
it.
Stefan Borson the other day, and did it, and I'm basing it upon his calculations. But they get to the round.
You're basing on the fact that you don't think Crystal Palace can go on and win the Europa League.
Well, no, I don't, because if you look at the quality of the competition that's in there, it's probably on a balance.
Just won it.
Balance. I accept that.
17th in the Premier League.
I accept that, but notwithstanding that, in my judgment, I think it's likely that Palace will find themselves in a situation where they might come out of the group stages and they might get into the round of 16, but it's likely on the balance of probability and legitimate budgeting, which is what Palace would do when they're looking at their finances going forward, that they would perhaps budget for being in the round of 16. Now, it's also reasonable to assume in the Conference League that an English team, as has been proven to be the case in most instances, goes deep into the competition. So the economics are not too dissimilar. So that means that Palace don't have to be sit there and go, well, we don't know who we're going to buy for. You kind of do if you in the worst case scenario.
But do you become more attractive to potential? I mean, listen, I'm not being disrespectful to Tottenham Hotspur. They won it, and they won it because they were the best team in that competition. But that competition, since you've taken away the drop downs from the Champions League, is easier to negotiate than it was previously.
I mean, was your question going to be, do you become more attractive to players to come and join you?
My question is going to be, do you think that you can attract a higher class of player if you're in the Europa League compared to if you're in the Conference League?
I don't think so. I think that would, you'd look at the reality of the club in and of itself as part of the pool. Chelsea were in the European Conference League, and the reason why Chelsea were able to attract better players is because A, they've got a legacy of a club that's able to compete at the very top of the division, and B, they spend money like drunken sailors. Palace will do neither, right? And so with all that in mind, I don't think that's a reason to be unduly concerned. What we should be unduly concerned about is the inherent unfairness of the circumstance, but Palace are the architects of their own downfall. I don't like the rule. I think it's a stupid rule. What Palace are doing is they can't keep arguing the idea that they're not an MCO. The UEFA have already told them that they are an MCO. Whether they like it or they don't, they've got to move their argument on. Whether they like the idea that they were communicated through an email address that they don't think is particularly prevalent, the same email address that ultimately communicated to them with the Premier League's position on the UEFA challenges, the same email address that their own finance director provided in their accounts, saying in Schedule G of their accounts, we have to acknowledge the changes in UEFA's governance. So they knew about it. They just didn't deal with it. And the reasons why they didn't deal with it are a little bit convoluted. It could be that Texas didn't allow them to. My argument with Parish, insofar as Parish is making a song and dance about this situation, is you are the executive controller of this football club. You are the person that runs the football club. It's your responsibility. If you've taken in an investor and put their money in your pockets as shareholders and put their money into the football club to bankroll the club through COVID, if you are across the detail of the football club, then it's your job to make sure that these sort of challenges are negated. Now, where Palace are going with this now is going, well, hang on a second. If you put a March the 1st deadline down there for Nottingham Forest, and Nottingham Forest had better facilities to get communication because Marinakos owns Olympiakos and he already knew what UEFA were going to be doing because there's a clearer line of communication, that doesn't wash with me. But let's say the arguments can be runnable. But by the same token, what the Palace are saying is that Forest were given dispensation by UEFA to actually have more time for March the 1st because Marinakos didn't comply with the obligations and has done the dance of the seven veils in and out of ownership. It's ridiculous. A blind trust is ridiculous. Who is the, if Marinakos puts his shares into a blind trust and so no longer appears to run Nottingham Forest, who do you think runs Nottingham Forest? Who is the decisive influence in Nottingham Forest?
So the fact that the whole thing is pointless, doesn't it render the argument useless?
Agreed. Agreed. But in terms of arguing about Palace's position on a moral point is one thing, or arguing it about the construct of the rules is another. I mean, Steve Parish was arguing about the principles of we're not an MCO. We can prove decisive influence doesn't lie with John Textor. Well, if you could prove it, why didn't you prove it to UEFA? And by the way, when you did a Sky interview, and I'm not trying to bash Parish here, when you did a Sky interview and you're asked about influence, I don't think the answer is, well, influence comes from everywhere. Influence could be my 8-year-old son. The fans who influence me. When you're asked, does John Textor has any influence? The answer is no.
Stefan Borson called it a surprising legal move because it could give Forest and Lyon the opportunity to make submissions that could potentially undermine Crystal Palace's case. Would they have been better off just looking to annul UEFA's club financial control body decision that the club was too closely linked to Lyon? Should they have attacked it in that?
I'm assuming that Palace would have taken all the best counsel that they possibly could. One of the things that they could and should have done some time ago was when they took Textor's investment to look at the reality of any kind of conflicts for the future. And of course, in this moment in time, not just rely on the idea that, because their big argument is we have proved beyond doubts that Textor had no decisive influence. Right? Okay, well, you clearly haven't. But in the instance of being in any kind of doubt, what Palace should have done 6 months ago when they were deciding that decisive influence was the argument they were going to run if they were ever challenged or they ever got to a point when they're in Europe, was to have counsel's opinion, legal counsel's opinion, and say, if we run this argument, are we going to be solid? I would assume they didn't do that. Now, going into where they are now, I would assume, given the level of acumen that's in that boardroom with Parish and Blitzer and Harris, right, that are not fools by any level, and ironically, I think Blitzer is more of an MCO guy than Textor is. If you look at Blitzer's ownership models, okay, it's very convoluted, but there's little doubt in my mind that he's got controlling influence in Brøndby. He might have it through a different vehicle. I think it's Global or HSBE. One of the shareholdings in Palace is in Global, a business called Global, and the other one is in Brøndby, is in HSBE. They might be the other way around.
There's definitely a connection there.
But it's definitely a connection. And the fact that they haven't had that one put across their bows for the European Conference League, I think is a miracle. I don't know where Stefan is suggesting that it's challenging for them to do this, but I would assume they must have good grounds for dragging Forest, because they think that the correspondence that's going between Forest and UEFA in terms of UEFA's attitude towards Forest being able to have different deadlines and move towards a different deadline might be more compelling, or might be a double whammy alongside trying to tackle what the UEFA adjudicatory panel as denoted.
Yeah, look, quite rightly, the Crystal Palace fans are upset by this, and I think I completely understand and sympathise with that. They call it a moral injustice, and they travelled to Switzerland yesterday. We'll talk about the protests in just a second. If you want to have your say on this, 03717223344 1089 on the text. You can WhatsApp us as well on the same number, 03717223344, and we'll discuss the Palace fans who travelled to Switzerland yesterday next on the programme.
Shin pads are a footballer's best friend. Even if players like Jack Grealish do wear such small ones you can barely even see them. But what's the story with shin pads, and are there actually any rules on how big they should be? It all started with cricket, actually. Cricketers had been wearing shin pads since the 1700s. It was thanks to this guy that shin protection made its way over to football. Meet Samuel Widdowson. He was a cricketer and a footballer. He played for Nottingham Forest back in the late 1800s, and he wanted a way to protect his legs from nasty tackles. Naturally, his mind drifted to his other favourite sport, where players had been wearing these pads for a century. Story goes, Widdowson cut up his cricket pads and popped them on before taking to the footy pitch. His Nottingham Forest team then began wearing them from 1887, and the first known use of them in a match was in 1894, in a match between Newcastle and the then Woolwich Arsenal. Eventually, FIFA clocked on that this kind of protection was pretty important for footballers. And so, in 1990, basically 100 years after Widdowson first put them on, shin pads were made compulsory. It became part of Law 4 of IFAB. That's the body responsible for setting the laws of the game internationally. But the law doesn't actually specify anything about measurements of shin pads. It just says they must be made of a suitable material and be of an appropriate size to provide reasonable protection. It's really vague, even though there have been calls for it to be changed. But for now, that's why Grealish and co can still get away with these ones, which are no bigger than a credit card and which seem to offer little to no protection whatsoever.
Lots of text messages coming in already. Darren from Gosport in Hampshire. Good morning. Would Everton suffer the same fate as Palace if they qualify for Europe? Obviously, the Freaking Zone Roma too. Great show, guys. I suppose there would certainly be an investigation into that if they were in a blind trust or not. That'd be something that maybe Everton have to worry about next year. My take is Palace should be out of Europe completely, says one text. This is Neil on the Wirral. They broke the rules. They should be out. They shouldn't go into the Conference League as they haven't qualified for it. Forest shouldn't go into the Europa also as they haven't qualified for it. Sick of this default process. We'll get into the protests in just a second. What was your assessment on that Everton situation?
Well, I'm assuming in the same way that other clubs have been able to find their way through it, such as Manchester United, that the clubs that are well organised and focused on the challenges and the opportunities that may come their way will go through the ridiculous charade of creating the optics that deliver the outcomes that UEFA seem to require. I mean, we make this argument, you and I, don't we, about MCOs and the idea that MCOs are allowed in some respects, but then disadvantaged by the very principles of having them in the first place.
Yeah, we don't understand it. We don't understand why it's allowed. If
I do and I don't understand it. I understand the principle of allowing it to be on different continents because it doesn't affect the competition, albeit the FIFA World Club Championship pulls it together.
Yeah.
I also clear in my mind that the one thing that I agreed and disagreed with when I spent some time with Arsene Wenger in Zurich was about the change in football predominantly being about ownership models. And the point I'm making here is I disagree that the only thing in football has changed is owners, because he says, what's changed? The fans? No. The players? No. The managers? No. The main thing that's changed is ownership. I don't think that's true. I think everyone's changed. But I do think he has a point.
Broadcasting has changed as money's
changed. Well, yeah, but players, the expectation of players, the way that managers' roles have evolved, the involvement of agents and how they've been able to represent 17 different people in the same part, in the same transaction has all evolved. But my point I'm labouring at is the reasons why I think multi-club ownership is being tolerated by UEFA is the ownership models want it, and the resources and the sophistication of ownership models that will start to talk about restriction of trade and governance issues that are prohibitive, and that's the reasons why I think multi-club ownership. Look what Man City did with the rule book when the APT came onto it, the Associated Party transactions. They went, hang on a second, you clowns, that doesn't stand up legally, and they drove a coach and horses for it. And I think some of the reasons why MCOs are being allowed in European football And the RB Leipzig example, which is basically a branding exercise and really a drinks company wanting to sell more fizzy drinks, but notwithstanding it, they were able to get through the barriers of the multi-club ownership model, is because they're very sophisticated in their thinking, and the football fraternity sometimes isn't, and that's why I think MCOs are being tolerated.
They'll drive a bus through the legal loopholes eventually.
That's my point.
They will do.
Yeah.
Let's go to the fourth test at Old Trafford. Sam Allard is waiting for us. England 2-1 up, and they'll win the series if they win the fourth test in Manchester this week. They haven't won a 5-test series since 2018. Sam, before we get into some of the bigger issues, can you just tell us about the toss, the situation, and the all-important weather forecast? I think, looking at my weather radar, you'll get 3, maybe 4 days of play.
Yeah, the weather doesn't look amazing for the days to come, but thankfully this morning there's been a little bit of drizzle in the air in Manchester, but we managed to get the toss on time at 10:30. England 2-1 up with 2 to play. England winning the toss, and with it being very overcast and very murky here in Manchester, Ben Stokes has chosen to bowl first. There is, though, a remarkable stat here at Old Trafford that no team has ever won at this ground, winning the toss and bowling first. But Ben Stokes won't care about that. For the 4th time in this series, he wins the toss and chooses to bowl first. Dawson in for Bashir is the only change for England. It's Dawson's first test match in 8 years. Bashir out with a finger problem. India make 3 changes. 2 come in the bowling attack. Kamboj comes in for a test debut. Thakur back into the team. Nitish and Akash miss out. Jasprit Bumrah does play for India, and Sai Siddharthan comes in for Karan Nair, who's been a little bit short of runs. It's been a thrilling test series. In the build-up to this test match, guys, lots of journalists and ex-players comparing this series already to a famous series that happened in this country 20 years ago, that famous Ashes series 05 England-Australia. And hey, if we get 2 more thrilling test matches with close finishes, a little bit needle out in the middle, maybe we'll be talking about this series in similar company with the Ashes series 20 years ago. First ball at 11 o'clock here in Manchester. Overcast conditions, England winning the toss. They'll have a bowl first.
Well, ahead of the 4th test, as you alluded to, the Indian captain Shubman Gill has accused England of acting contrary to the spirit of cricket after their time-wasting tactics sparked a number of confrontations in the 3rd test at Lord's.
Yes, a lot of people have been talking about it, so let me just clear the air for once and for all. The English batsmen on that day, they had 7 minutes of play left. They were 90 seconds late to come to the crease. Not 10, not 20, 90 seconds late. Yes, most of the teams, they use this. Even if we were in a position, we would have also liked to play lesser overs, but there's a manner to do it. And we felt, yes, if you get hit on your body, the physios are allowed to come on, and that is something that is fair. But to be able to come 90 seconds late on the crease is not something that I would think comes in the spirit of the game.
Well, it's interesting this. What is the spirit of cricket? I mean, is there no place?
Pat Cummins.
Is there no place in the dark arts for sport? I mean, should behaviour in the game always
It's up to the umpire to determine that, isn't it?
noble and connote the strongest, most Corinthian values? Is that
Well, it's
what
up
you
to the
wanna see?
umpire, isn't it, to determine the spirit of the game and the manner in which it operates, not the opposition. I mean, I think there's always, the culture of the game, whether it be sledging or whether it be the instances that we've seen in the rivalries between various teams. I like the fact England have pushed back. I like the fact they've been quite robust about it and almost physical about their response to it. It's a tough game. It's played by tough competitors. And, I think the Indians should get on with it a little bit.
Do you know what, Sam? It is interesting, the development of this England side and the mentality of this England side.
Antipodean mentality, that's why.
They've got a little bit of edge about them now, haven't they? And certainly some robustness.
Yeah, I have to say, by the way, just on those comments from Shubman Gill, I mean, honestly, stop moaning, stop complaining, and grow up. I mean, his team, his batsmen, would have done the exact same thing in that situation. When any team has got to face a tricky 7 minutes batting right at the end of day's play in overcast conditions, it's always every batsman's worst nightmare. And I promise you, if his 2 opening batsmen had to face a similar situation, they would have done everything in their powers to be a little bit late, to, get a physio on, to do their laces up, to face as few balls as possible. It's being sensible, trying to manage the situations. I've got to say, Shubman, I don't think he came across particularly well in there, moaning and complaining. And this is the guy, by the way, that last test match took 8 minutes out of the game because he wanted a massage during the play, and we all sat around and waited for him. So I've got to say, Shubman, stop moaning, stop complaining, and get on with it. But yeah, I love the fact that England have fought back well. And it all came from that over there, where Crawley and Duckett were taking time out of the game, and India's fielders were very, very vocal. They got in the faces of Crawley and Duckett, And I think England made a decision after that day to, you know what, lads, we've got to stick together here. We've got to fight back. And for the last 2 days, they fought back. They gave a couple of send-offs. They were aggressive, and it's good to see. I love seeing stuff like this. We've got 2 really good cricket teams, and we've seen 3 really good test matches so far. But I always think it's that extra little bit exciting when there's a little bit of needle, a little bit of aggro. I think it adds to the drama, adds to the occasion. And, yeah, I love that last test match.
Excellent. Cheers, Sam. Thank you very much. Enjoy Manchester. Don't forget that we're broadcasting the final 2 matches of the Test series on the talkSPORT Cricket YouTube channel to our overseas audience, with our team comprising of the likes of Steve Harmison and David Bumble Lloyd. We're also going to have daily review shows available, including Following On and Jared Kimber's Super Over. Right, let's talk a little bit about these fans' protests that we saw in Switzerland yesterday. Members of the Palace Ultras group, the Holmesdale Fanatics, who organised the original march at Selhurst Park when there was a huge protest, yesterday travelled to UEFA's HQ in Nyon. They basically gained access to the building and hand-delivered a letter addressed to the UEFA President, Alexander Seferin, which demanded the reversal of the moral injustice and Palace's reinstatement into the Europa League. Travelling to Switzerland, taking in the protests, is taking it to a next level. To the ones that occurred, as we can see on our screens here outside Selhurst Park. Apparently they handed a suitcase of fake money over as well as this letter, asking him to overturn this moral injustice. Do you think there will be a part of UEFA that take this more seriously because of the protests? Do these protests actually achieve anything?
Well, protests and public opinion are swayed, and then governance and governments move. But there isn't a lot of momentum behind Crystal Palace from I think the Premier League have been facilitatory and allowing Woody Johnson to be approved very quickly, so that the takeover of the shares that Textor had was facilitated clearly. The Premier League have rumbled about their discontent, but you tend to get more traction when you've got more noise and a disparate group of honest Palace fans that would have the right to feel the way that they do, that there is a moral injustice because you're taking the past and overlay it in the present. This is really a victimless crime insofar as a crime has been committed, because the 2 teams that are going to play in this competition, if Palace were still in it, have no index into one another. So when the ball is actually kicked now, Crystal Palace won't have shared shareholders in terms of Lyon and Crystal Palace. So it's all a bit ridiculous.
Yeah, there'll be no connection.
There'll be no connection whatsoever. And even if the argument was successful about decisive influence being able to be achieved, which Steve Parish is now asserting the principle, we have conclusively proven no decisive influence. Well, clearly you haven't. Now, we've seen a history of UEFA being reversed by CAS, but certainly in the Man City instance. But I'm not entirely sure that this is the same zip code, ballpark, or set of parameters that enable CAS to look at it any differently than UEFA have done. But the fact is that if Palace fans feel so inclined, again, I make the point, and people will look at my motivations, and I don't really care if they think my motivations are based upon a relationship with Steve Parish. If you are the executive control of this football club, you need to be across the details. And if you knew or should know that there is a challenge to the ownership model that you facilitated, you went out and raised the capital. You went out and took a shareholder in because you needed money. You put that money into your pockets and the other shareholders' pockets, and you use it to bankroll the club. And then roll forward 4 years later, and all of a sudden, that has compromised an outcome in the present. That's
if everybody
on the
else
ownership
did it and
Palace.
Textor didn't do it.
Yeah.
Isn't it Textor's fault?
How can it be Textor's fault? Textor was sold shares by the incumbent shareholders.
But he didn't put his shares in a blind trust.
But it wasn't incumbent upon him to do so. It's incumbent upon the executive control to introduce the thinking. Textor contradicted himself. I like John, but he contradicted himself a number of the times on the time. He said, well, either you knew or you didn't, right? So clearly there must have been some challenges, and they must have been visible to them. And Parish made the argument that I can't make John Textor do anything I don't want him to do. Well, Textor wanted Palace to continue with loan signings in the Premier League from associated clubs, and Parish voted against it, which I think Textor was unhappy about. So clearly the governance is inside the football club in Parish's favour. Now, Textor sat in the studio and said, if I'd have been asked now, okay, people could say, well, he might be talking with a forked tongue. But when he said, if I was asked to put it into a trust mechanism to be able to avoid this challenge earlier in the time.
But if you're a director of a football club, you should know that.
Well, ultimately the entire board should know it, and selling
he is a part of the executive of that football club by being a shareholder of that club.
And I think there's an element of a lot of people in football are light on the detail. Certainly businessmen that are playing in football and their fiduciary responsibilities and also the inherent obligations around every single rule. And we've all been guilty of it. Everyone. No one knows every single aspect, even a stato like you. But the fact of the matter is, if you're the executive control, if Parish runs the club and makes the decisions, and the board is weighted in such a way that the decisions go with his decision-making process, then surely it was incumbent upon him to have delivered an outcome that avoided this. Now, if Textor had proven to be a dog in a manger and said, I'm absolutely not prepared, because I asked him, is there not an issue around you putting your shares in blind trust, because you're not holding your shares in an individual's name like Jim Ratcliffe or Marinakis, you're holding it in a structure of Eagle Holdings, and that might have prohibited you wanting to do that, because it might have stopped the IPO that you were trying to achieve on the New York Stock Exchange. It might have been something you didn't want to do, and he categorically denied the fact that there was no framework which had stopped him from doing it. He was never asked to do it. If he was never asked to do it, if I'm an investor in a football club and the shareholders come to me and say, we're desperate to raise some money, we need some money, we're prepared to sell our shares, and we also need to bankroll ourselves through COVID, and to do that we're going to sell X percentage of the football club, which initially started at 75% and worked back to 43%. So Palace knew what they were doing. Textor wanted to buy 75%. Parish and the committee of shareholders didn't want to sell him 75%, they wanted to sell him 43%. So they knew what they were doing. And by the way, Sam, this rule is not a new rule. It didn't cut, the timing of it is the only thing that's changed.
Yes, the deadline's changed.
The rule came in 2009, 2010 when I was there, right? And the rule was clarified, and the parameters and the broadness of it was clarified explicitly in the 2017 judgment RP Leipzig were able to achieve. So this is not a secret. The only thing that anyone can argue about is the June 1st deadline moving to March 1st.
Yeah, and Crystal Palace obviously not realising that they were going to be in Europe, or not anticipating that was going to be the case, and not prioritising doing as was expected of them. But does that mean they should be kicked out of the Europa League and sent into the Conference League? They've certainly protested against it. CAS now hearing that, and we'll have an outcome on the 11th of August. 037172233 44 is the number to call if you want to get in touch. You're listening to Matterface and Jordan on talkSPORT with Selco Builders Warehouse. Check out this month's real deals at selcobw.com. Next, we'll be joined by professional golfers Lee Westwood and Henrik Stenson on the programme. talkSPORT. It's Sam Matterface and Simon Jordan. We're here through to 1 o'clock this afternoon. The heating in here was a rise. So if you're watching on the YouTube channel and you're wondering why me and Simon are stripping off, that is the reason, nothing else, I promise you. Let's get to this new initiative that's been launched by Lee Westwood, Henrik Stenson and Ian Porter. Lee and Henrik join us live now. The Majestics GC launching his Little Sticks initiative. Lee, Henrik, thank you very much for coming on the programme.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome along. Just tell us a little bit about the Little Sticks initiative and what you're looking to achieve.
It's our charity programme. It's there to encourage young people to take up the game of golf, basically. You know, young people get a choice to play all sorts of sports, and we're trying to encourage them to take up golf. You know, it takes golf into the community, you know, tries to enhance their lives. And we feel with golf, it's not only, you know, taking up a sport, but you know, we have the etiquette of the game as well, and you know, that can help in life as well. So just trying to keep putting a little bit back into the community.
Boys, what's the current barrier to entry? Is it the price of golf and the cost implications behind it? Is that the real barrier to entry for young kids being able to play it and being brought into the curriculum of schools?
I think getting in contact with the game itself is obviously a great start. Like Lee said, it's also about learning life lessons and life skills. So it's really a combination. You get introduced to golf itself. You get to learn things that you can you know bring with you for the rest of your life, really, and then. Hopefully, a lot of the kids that get in contact with the program will pursue the game going forward. I know in Sweden it's quite accessible, and I think it's fairly accessible in the UK as well. Obviously, you need to have some sort of equipment and have a place to go and practice and play. But in comparison to a lot of other parts of the world, I think the game is quite accessible in Europe.
Yeah, I think the price is a problem. You know, joining clubs and the equipment to start off with can be expensive. I also think the time it takes to play is also a problem with, you know, kids nowadays and young people. Their attention span seems to be quite short. So, you know, the fact that a round of golf, as we saw at the Open, was taking 6 hours last week, you know, it needs to take a shorter form or be played faster, and that's where we come in. You know, we're on the TV showing them how to do it, so if we can get around quicker, that will also help. You know, there are many reasons why golf needs to change and break down the barriers and preconceived ideas of what the game's about.
It was interesting actually that you mentioned that, because what was it like for you playing at the Open last week? Henrik, you weren't very happy at all, were you, with the inconsistent play, pace of play and the monitoring? What was your view on it?
Yeah, I mean, like Lee says, I think my round on Thursday morning took 5 hours 45 minutes. It was 5:40, I think, to play on Friday, and then all of a sudden 1 minute is of the essence on Saturday midday, and it has been a bit inconsistent. Pace of play has been a constant topic for as long as we can remember, and so far there hasn't seemed to be a way to get it sorted. But yeah, maybe a shot clock going forward is the way. You have your, you know, X amount of minutes, and then if you take 2 minutes on a shot, that's really difficult, so be it. But then you got to be playing at 30-40 seconds on all the other ones, so who knows. But yeah, the pace of play in general is obviously slow, and like Lee says, it's what everyone will see on TV, and then it tends to take a lot more time on the weekends for everyone as well. So it obviously needs to be addressed.
Well, obviously a lot of those things and a lot of the different sort of accessible, more razzmatazz features have been prominent in Live Golf. How has it progressed since its inception in 2022? Has the tour had the desired impact from the original bombshell introduction? What's it like playing on the tour?
Yeah, I think people are starting to accept it more now. Obviously, we do have a shotgun start, which encourages faster rounds. You know, we have the music playing on the golf course, which, you know, appeals to a younger audience. We see a younger a younger generation coming out and watching us. We also see people with kids not afraid to come out and bring the kids with them, because, you know, the kids can make the noise with the music playing. You know, we don't really hear it. So it's a much more relaxed and friendly atmosphere out here, more like an entertainment / you know, party type of atmosphere with some serious golf going on as well. So and I think the establishment's starting to take Live on board now and treat it more seriously. You know, we've been talking about recently that official World Golf Rankings, an application's gone in for that, so more spots for major championships for Live players. So I think people are starting to you know, get rid of the preconceptions that they have and give Live a chance now.
What's the overall state of health of the game of golf? I mean, one of my best mates, Ryan Howsam, owns the Stayshore Seniors Tour, so I spend a little bit of time looking at the commercials of it. How would you assess it as a sport in terms of its overall state of health against all the other sports in the world?
Well, I mean, if you look at the money coming into the game, then it's very healthy. I think where it's lacking is the fact that, you know, people haven't accepted Live, you know, as a serious product, and the major championships have been a little bit guarded. And I just think that fans on the outside, they want to see the best players playing in the major championships, and just at the moment, you know, you have certain players missing out playing in those, and once that comes round, you know, I don't see a problem anywhere. I think that it's healthy for the game that Live's come on the scene, and the PGA Tour have had to up their game, and you know, but I'm slightly worried about the European Tour, you know, getting lost in all this a little bit, but you know, with a few frank discussions with them, I think you know, we could change the way their future looks as well.
Going back to the genesis of this conversation, fellas, I mean, obviously this is an initiative to break down barriers. How is the participation levels from younger generations evolving into golf at this stage?
On a bigger scale, I think. I mean, there's been a lot of people getting in contact with golf over the last 10 or 15 years in a different way than traditionally. I think I heard a figure the other day that it was actually more people playing golf off grass than on grass in a way, which I guess is more driving range, top golf, like those
simulators, things like that.
Golf has grown quite a lot. So I mean, and it's always going to be crossovers and flowovers in that sense. I mean, as a sport, I think it's great for anyone to get in contact with it, no matter how and where, and then that will progress and lead into other areas of contact. So yeah, I think like Lee says, I think the game is in a healthy state. Obviously, it's been some turmoil over the last couple of years here, and some unhappy fans more than anything. But I think that will change going forward, and you know, sooner or later everything kind of finds its place, and we'll be back to a calmer future with that. And yeah, as long as people are interested in watching and playing golf, I think we're in a good spot.
Yeah, I think golf. Just to interject there, I think golf has realised that, you know, all sports have to move with the times and evolve, and I think golf has realised that, you know, it was a bit, you know, set in its ways and going a bit stale, and, you know, the whole establishment thing has realised it's, you know, going to have to change with the times, and you can see that with you know, the use of more technology in the game of golf, you know, the fact that kids are playing it more on computers, and like Henrik said, there's more, you know, more golf played off grass now than on grass. You know, that's kind of moving with the times as well. So, you know, cricket did it with 2020. You know, there's new five-a-side football leagues shooting up. So, you know, everybody's you know, challenging in this market, you know, this sports market, and especially with the team format that Live Golf's got. You know, team sport and franchises are big at the moment. You know, franchises are only increasing in value all the time, which shows, you know, the attractiveness that people see to watching team sport and franchises and franchise sport. So you know, this is the first step into golf for franchise. You know, the PGA Tour have jumped along with their TGL and followed kind of in the footsteps of Liv with teams. So, that seems to be the way that it's going. And I think golf is, for the game of golf, it's moving pretty quickly.
It is, certainly. Thank you very much. We let you move pretty quickly because you've been holding that umbrella up for quite some time. Henrik Stenson and Lee Westwood, thank you very much for joining us on the programme. We're going to be looking at a series of changes at Brentford in the summer next. Johan Visser leaving their pre-season tour of Portugal amid a bid from Newcastle United. That's still to come.
The Lions. Real-life fantasy rugby, bitter rivalries set aside in a quest to create the world's best team in weeks. There's nothing like it, but who on earth had the idea and how did it all begin? Incredibly, the first Lions tour was organised and funded by three men who played in England's first ever Test cricket match: opening bowler Alfred Shaw, opening batsman Arthur Shrewsbury and captain James Lillywhite. The 1888 Lions squad, then made up of 17 English, 4 Scots and 1 Welshman and a Northern Irishman, took a 46-day boat trip to New Zealand before heading to Australia. The Lions weren't alone on the boat. Also on board were 300 stoats and weasels who were brought over to eliminate New Zealand's rabbit problem. The first ever Lions captain, Robert Seddon, died of drowning midway through the tour while sculling on a river. Andrew Stoddart, who was another of the cricketers there, took over and was the star of the tour. The next one was the first to get official recognition from the RFU against the newly formed Springboks. Although the Lions won the series and beat the Boks again 5 years later, in the 12 series since in South Africa, they've only won 2. New Zealand has proved an even tougher hunting ground, just the 1 series win for the Lions in 11 attempts, which came in 1971. And then there was that nail-shredding drawn series in 2017, only the second in Lions history. Only once have the Lions clinched a series after losing the first test, 1989, when David Campese's infamous ghost pass was pounced upon by Ian Evans. Before World War II, the Lions had a dark blue strip, which on the 1930 tour forced the All Blacks to play in all white. So in 1950, the iconic red shirts, white shorts and blue and green socks combination was born. It remains the symbol of the greatest alliance of adversaries in all of sport. To borrow the phrase from Jim Telfer, the Lions is Everest.
It's talkSPORT and a very good morning to you. It's Sam Matterface alongside Simon Jordan today, and it is that time of the year when you've got to negotiate with different clubs for your players, and players are interested in leaving, and you're trying to put a squad together for a brand new campaign, but all of a sudden someone comes in and swoops for one of your stars, or in Brentford's case, someone comes in, swoops for your manager, your first team coach, your analyst, your superstar forward number one, your superstar forward number two, and your captain as well. A difficult summer for Brentford, because losing Mbeumo as well as the manager and some of his staff as well looks to be just the opening gambit, really, because Johan Visser has left the pre-season tour as his departure looms. I mean, look, after Frank going, Norgard going, the captain, and Mbeumo going, mentioned about the situation with the first two coaches. How difficult is it if you're an owner of that football club and you're trying to put together a brand new season which starts in less than, a month, when you've got all this swooping around you?
Not easy, is it? These are the tasks that you bring in top people to do top jobs with. I mean, this time last year, Crystal Palace were facing, apparently, existential threat as a result of everyone that being bought, that was their best players, whether it be Elise, Eze, whether it be Joachim Andersen, or whether it be Gehi. And they managed to ride the storm out and sold one of the players that they actually wanted to sell, sold two of the players, and one of them they got top money for, and was drawn to one of the elite clubs in Europe, which is Bayern Munich. And it's an interesting phenomenon when you're now seeing clubs like Crystal Palace selling players to Bayern Munich, and I quite like that, because I've always believed that there's an unfortunate position of being clubs like Crystal Palace where some of the legacy football clubs can take liberties with you. They haven't got to pay the top money for players. And I think that's one of the reasons why Wilfried Zaha didn't go to Arsenal at that time, because Palace had valuations of him and Arsenal thought they could nick him for 40 million quid, and it wasn't going to happen. Now, of course, it's challenging. I think that players move around all the time. People felt that when Ivan Toney left, it was going to be an absolute, Hail Mary to the future of Brentford, but it wasn't. They were a better side last year to some extent. Now, the thing for Brentford is, if they're going to lose these players, they must ensure that they lose them on their terms, as much as they have terms to lose them on. And now £25 million for a forward, and I think Wissa's quite a decent player. I think more than that, wouldn't it? I think that they have to make Newcastle work harder. They've made Man United work hard for Mbeumo. I don't think he's worth 70 million quid, but he is, because someone's paid it. And so in this instance, there must be thought processes that are flowing through. They must know these challenges. They're not coming out of the ether. Two biggest things in football are gossip and money. So they would have known there was going to be interest in these players, and they'll know all this. And one of the things that reassures me, and it might be mistakenly reassured, because everybody at the end of the day comes up short at some point, at some stage in their evolutions or their cycles. Look at Man United, after dominating the Premier League for 25 years, are now in the doldrums, or certainly 20 years, is that Matthew Benham and the thinking and the sophistication behind Brentford's thinking has always been there to be seen, in the same way that it's the same at Brighton. They make very few mistakes. So Keith Andrews, for me, is the component part that I spend a little bit more time being troubled by, because Brentford can rebuild and they can reevaluate. And, losing their captain for 14 million to Arsenal, not ideal, but notwithstanding that was always going to be the case once Arsenal came knocking, unless Arsenal were really not going to pay anything for him.
We asked Director of Football Phil Giles to come on the programme today, actually, and he politely declined.
But they don't, do they? When do they come on? When do sporting directors really come on?
Not very often.
Certainly, and so we mustn't read too much into the fact that he doesn't want to come on.
No, but what I was going to say was,
has been on.
Are we actually overlooking the fact that because of the high-profile departures, we haven't maybe paid enough attention to the players that have come into the football club?
Possibly.
You've got Queven Kelleher, who arguably is one of the best goalkeepers in the Premier League, and he was playing second fiddle to one of the other great goalkeepers of the Premier League. He's now going to be number one at Brentford. Yeah. Michael Coyote, who was on loan from Fiorentina at the end of last season, has had his move. It turned into a permanent move.
No one gets excited by those.
Very, very good.
But no football fan gets excited by someone they've already seen.
Jordan Henderson?
Merely cementing. I don't know. I mean, Jordan Henderson, for me, is a spent force at elite level. So what does he bring to Brentford? He brings some. I'm happy to be wrong. But Jordan's most recent times have been to go to a country that he suggested that he didn't support, and was quite vocal about the human rights causes that they were trampling all over, yet went and played over there, then came back after 5 minutes because he didn't like it and went to Ajax, and then got himself involved in conversations at Ajax that people couldn't quite understand as to whether he was staying or leaving.
He did very well at Ajax.
Sure.
There was a lot going on behind the scenes there, but he did very well.
I don't think we can draw a parallel between the Eredivisie and the Premier League. I don't think that the Eredivisie as a league is in anywhere near shape or form resembling.
No, but Arne Slot would say that the transition was quite smooth for him.
But he walked into an elite football club with elite players that are Premier League established.
And he's working into a football club that has got a history of signing very good players based on a data model, which has always served them well.
And that's why we gain comfort from it. But comparing a manager's experience to a player's experience is like comparing apples to oranges. They're two different skill sets. So Arne Slot walking into a Ferrari and ultimately having to buy nothing, and people might want to say it was a Mini because it didn't win anything at the back end of Klopp's reign.
I'm fascinated to hear what car's coming out for Brentford.
No, look, I mean, I think Brentford are a very, very good football club. I think Matthew Benham is a very good thinker, and I think there'll be no stones unturned. But to suggest that we can't get sporting directors on as a reason for potentially the travails that they're facing, you bring me a sporting director that's been on.
I wasn't suggesting that. I was just saying we asked him to come on, and he said no.
And he did the formulaic no.
But my view on it is that are we overlooking the fact that they have brought in players because there's been so many high-profile departures? Johan Visser could be the latest of those. He could go to Newcastle.
If Thomas Frank was in situ.
Possibly, yeah.
People would be less concerned if they are indeed concerned. There'd be less confected concern on behalf of Brentford from the people that don't support Brentford if Thomas Frank was still in situ.
Newcastle, though, are the ones that we expect to make a bid for him. And Newcastle also, the subject of a bit of a scenario with Alexander Isak. We understand that he wants £300,000 a week in order to sign a new contract there. He's got a contract until 2028. I mean, there is a part of me that thinks, well, yeah, I understand why he wants that money, and I think they should probably just give it to him.
There is a part of me that understands that he signed a long-term contract and they don't have to do anything of the sort. So they
don't have to.
Well, then you get into the territory of, do you have to argue the realities of a player having the hump that he can't get what he wants?
Do you not think he's worth it?
I think that he is worth to Newcastle whatever they're prepared to pay. And there is a certain limitation to that, because it isn't just what you do for Isak, it's what you then have to do to others as a result of Isak.
He's the star of the show.
Of course he is, but there's some big names in that dressing room as well. Tonali's no slouch, neither is Guimaraes, and neither is Joe Linton, and neither a few of the other players
they're all getting good wages, but they also understand just the value of this guy and his goals and the difference it makes to that team.
Is that how it works then in the socialism world of Sam Matterface?
No, it's not socialism, is it? It's the meritocracy, and he does the star striking,
and they will consider that they are all part of a unique outfit. They'll understand that he might be the cherry on the top, but believe me, in the dressing room, if someone else's wages go up, there's not a tacit acceptance. Well, he's the star, so we shouldn't get a pay rise.
Well, the alternative is to lose him eventually.
That's always an alternative, because you're as secure as the long-term position of your contract. Now, do you believe that Alexander Usyk, if he continues to be as good as we think he is and as good as he's exhibited, right, that he's going to be at Newcastle unless Newcastle start
Alexander
to
Isak, Usyk's the boxer.
Isak, sorry, I've got boxing in my brain. Thank you. I don't think he will be. I think it's a balancing act between what he wants and what you've got him under contract to do, what you gave him when he signed a contract, and what opportunities you facilitated for him to come into the Premier League against what the market forces dictate. I am with you to some extent. If the best players in the world are getting, or the best players in the league, or the best players in other clubs that he could join are getting £300,000 a week,
point, really,
then he should be getting it too. But I'm also of the point that he signed a contract, unless it's a real quid pro quo, a proper quid pro quo from the football club, which is we get you to sign for 5 years, and by the way, we put a £175 million release clause in, and we're not accept a penny less. If there's a quid pro quo like that, then I can justify in my mind as to the reasons why Newcastle might get somewhere towards whatever he's on now, towards what he may want as a result of the economic. But really and truly, besides bad form and being a bad actor, he has no leverage. He has no leverage.
Because he's got a contract till 2028.
Correct. And if we want to condone bad acting and bad form from players and suggest that ultimately contracts are not worth anything, then what does that say? You might say that it's realistic, but it's not to be applauded.
The reality of the situation is different, isn't it? If they were to receive a bid of 150 million quid, they would part company with him in a blink of an eye. So it's the same situation both
and £150 million on the nail with no drip feeding down. And if people want it, then that's what they should have to pay. If you want to buy my player that I found, that I put in my team, that I gave you the vision before you even thought of it, and you pay me what I want, when I want, how I want, otherwise bugger off.
Sam Allard is at the fourth test at Old Trafford. How have India started their innings?
They've started well, 11 without loss in the opening 17 minutes. Chris Wilkes bowled a really good first over. First ball of the test match, a ball nipping away to Yashasvi Jaiswal. Later on in the first over, he found the outside edge of the India opening batsman on 2 occasions. Once it fell short of Zach Crawley at third slip, and another time the final ball of the over erased away between second and third slip to the boundary. First real shot in anger from KR Ayal, a short ball from Chris Wilkes, pulling him into the leg side for a boundary. So it's Archer and Wilkes opening the bowling for England, but KR Ayal and Yashasvi Jaiswal have negotiated the first few overs pretty well so far. KR Ayal's got 5, Jaiswal's got 4. India being asked to bat here in Manchester in overcast conditions are 11 without loss.
This is talkSPORT. Sam Matterface, Simon Jordan. You're listening with Selco's Builders Warehouse. It's where the trade go. Next, with the new season fast approaching, we're going to take a closer look at the ticket price increases across the Premier League after a comprehensive study was published yesterday.
100% engagement. Jim White and Simon Jordan on talkSPORT.
Right, competition time, and Coldplay back at Wembley this summer, and we've got huge VIP prizes up for grabs. One lucky listener is going to get the chance to win 6 tickets in a private box with full hospitality for you and your mates August 22nd. We're also going to chuck in 10 grand tax free, and the way to enter, if you're in the UK, excluding Northern Ireland, you're over 18, you just text the word WIN to 83338. 4th of August, 11 o'clock is the deadline, and you're in the draw. Text costs £2 plus the standard network rate message. You have to have the bill payer's permission, or post your name and number to Coldplay Competition, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 7th of August. It's a TalkSPORT limited promotion run on TalkSPORT, Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full terms and conditions apply, and they're available at talksport.com. Aston Villa kick off their Premier League season at home to Newcastle on Saturday the 16th of August, 12:30. It's live on talkSPORT. I was chatting to Rashmin about that yesterday, and we've got Gabby Bonlahor with us for the first game of the season.
Sorry about that. That's wonderful. So that's what I meant, yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. He won't be in the Holt End, which is a shame. Maybe the reason he wants to sit with us is because tickets in the Holt End for that fixture are going to set you back £77. It's an increase of 5% on last season. The cheaper tickets that are available are 71, 58.
For casuals, yeah.
I mean,
for casual tickets.
Yeah.
I don't mean casual in terms of their investment in a football club, but for non-season ticket holders.
Absolutely. Right. I mean, how important is it to have affordable match tickets? I mean, especially like in you know those iconic stands, so the Stretford End, the
we got what was the
Matthew Harding?
I would suggest that
Cop End.
Of course, it's important to be able to have 4 stadiums. Of course, it's important to be able to meet the affordability of fans. There is, unfortunately, a demand and supply issue in terms of the demand. The supply is exceeded by the demand. Hence the reasons why football's continually able to keep manoeuvring around its ticket prices and visiting it back on the fans. I don't know what Villa's penetration of season ticket holders is, but I imagine it's pretty high. And so, I mean, the one club that really surprised me with the proliferation of season tickets was Liverpool, because given that Liverpool is such a community football club, I was surprised to see that they had less than 50% of their tickets sold to season tickets as a stock in trade.
Why do you think that is?
Because there's more money in selling casual tickets, which surprises me, given the culture and ethos of that football club and the collectiveness and the fan base and the uniqueness of it all. But you look at most football clubs and they tend to have upwards of 60 to 70% of their revenues generated from season tickets, which is good from 2 points of view. A, it's guaranteed income and paid at a certain time of the season, but B, it's good for the fans because it's the cheapest way to watch football.
Yes, it is.
So there's also the flip side of that, which means me as a former club owner had a mentality which I wanted to make sure that as best I could, I looked after the season ticket holders. As best I could, I made sure that their prices weren't attacked.
Well, that's interesting. Why was that?
Because they are, to me, the lifeblood of a football club. There's more commitment from them towards their football club. Now, there might be a variety of different reasons why people can't buy season tickets, and I understand that. But there were a variety of different ways to solve the problem of buying season tickets, like spreading it over payment plans over the course of 10 months and doing it on interest-free credit to be able to meet the cost implications that you want to pay. And then you've got the casual ticket holders that often were people that wanted to pick and choose the games that they had. So everybody wants to see Liverpool. Everybody wants to see Manchester United. And those games were the ticket price. We had categories of ticketing. We did A, B, C games and ratcheted the ticketing price up based upon the opposition. So it's a balancing act between valuing fans, recognising the demand of the marketplace as being, or the supply of the marketplace as being exceeded by the demand, and balancing that against the increasing costs of football.
Yeah, but the issue that I think fans have got at the moment, and you sort of alluded to it there, you were talking about back in the day when you were the owner of Crystal Palace, you valued the season ticket buyers because they were the lifeblood of the club. Yeah. They were there all the time. Yeah. They would be spending year in, year out.
And that's becoming nuanced now because they're putting obligations upon season ticket holders to be inside stadiums.
Oh, yeah, tell me about it.
I've seen that.
But the real issue here is that the everyday normal fan feels as if they're being priced out of the game because what the actual clubs, especially the bigger clubs, I mean, it feels like, I'm not saying that this is their motivation, but for me, it feels like they would rather have one-off trips, tourist fans coming in because they spend 77 quid on a ticket, and then they go into the shop and buy a shirt.
There's some truth in that.
And the revenue, the amount of revenue that they spend on a match day is much greater than the season. And I think they would prefer to have more of those than they would have the season ticket.
I don't think they'd prefer to have more of those. I think they'd like to have people spending more money inside football stadiums. And in the ideal world, if there were people that
But if you make the facilities better, people will spend more money in football stadiums,
come on now. We're now living in a generation. And again, this goes to the argument.
Depends where you go. I'm talking about, I go to Old Trafford a lot. Obviously, it's around the corner from me.
Yeah.
You don't want to spend too much money in there.
No, fair enough. But you are right in your point, and it can seem to be cynical. It is the practice of business. Business now owns sport. The economics of sport are dictating that there needs to be revenue squeezed from every angle, and ultimately the fan is at the centre of this argument, because they'll turn around and say they don't want this, and this is not really what they wanted. But you've got a globalised sport now that costs enormous amounts of money to run. Very few football clubs are making any money, and if they're lucky enough to sell it, maybe they make some dough. But most of the time, it's clubs being funded from benefactors, and PSR is governing certain restrictions. So you get this balancing act. I'm not going to name him, but one of the chief executives and chairman of a football club is quite open to turn around and say that we look at concession pricing now, and say that ultimately, once upon a time, concessions started at 60. People are now working to 65 years of age. Why would you be giving concessions to people that are still working in full-time employment? And then you look at the concessions and what they spend, and it's quite cynical again, is that people of a certain persuasion don't spend money in the stadium. They don't buy beers, they don't buy merchandise, they don't buy programmes. And unfortunately, when business meets sport and agendas meet sport, then it becomes a different dynamic. And people might not like it, but this is the sport. If you want the best players, the best managers, and you want the best facilities, which often people do, it costs money.
Yeah, but you and I both had this conversation privately yesterday, in which I said to you, I was really concerned if you keep driving the prices, keep upsetting the fans, keep alienating the lifeblood, keep increasing the games, keep putting television barriers between people and football and crowding the market. One day I feel that this greed of exponential growth will see it swallow itself whole, and I'm concerned about that.
I agree with you to a point, right? But the nuance on that conversation was about independent regulation and about governance and about PSR and about the requirements for free-to-air broadcasting. So when you start loading all these things on the Premier League, you start turning the golden goose into a poisoned chalice, you start to de-incentivise people to invest in football clubs, all of a sudden the Premier League will become a selling league. It'll become something that, if you look at all these politicians jumping on with the governance bill, with a politician that came on the other day talking about free-to-air stuff, where do you think all this money is going to come from to do these things? You want to regulate the Premier League, you want to put governance on it, you want to get rid of parachute payments, you want to distribute the money fairly, and you want to give free-to-air broadcasting. All of these things are not unconnected.
Well, that's the thing. You can't have everything, can you?
So my point is, get the outside influences out. Get politicians that don't understand football and sport, not because I want to be a layman about it, but because they're dipping in because it's populist.
Yeah, but they're only doing that because the fans are unhappy and because they feel as if they're being alienated.
But are they?
Well, it's not populist unless people want them to do it.
Whatever you give certain sections of... I mean, I watch fans now with an interested perspective because I am a fan. I was a fan. I came from being a fan to being an owner, and I don't lose my fandom by being an owner. But there is a reality about what you want and who has to pay for it. Because I used to sit in meetings with fans going, right, here's the thing, right? Is it your football club or my football club? It's our football club. It belongs to us. We're the fans. You're merely a custodian. Okay, I'm going to put your season ticket prices up. Well, why? Because then I'm going to use the money to buy better players for you, which is what you want. Oh, no, hang on a second. Oh, so now it's my football club when it comes to funding it. There is a trade-off and a balance, but the issue that you're raising has merit to it, but it's more about what they're doing to the game rather than the demands that are being put upon fans. Yes, the broadcasters are charging more money than everyone anticipated, and maybe the Premier League needs to think about its own distribution deal, which I've been speaking about for years, which is Netflix of football, bring the cost down so that people that are watching in Australia don't pay less than the people that actually are indigenous to the country where the football is being played. We all know that goes on, but the parameters of football are driving it to such an extent. And when people sit here, you'll say to me, well, you know, in fairness, Alexander Isak should get £300 a week. Oh, he should he? So how does that work when it comes down to the economies of scale?
That's the market.
But the market is driven by the circumstances, and who funds the marketplace? Just the benefactors, or all the component parts, the supposed people that actually own the football clubs, which are the fans.
03717 2233 44. If you want to talk about it, 81089 on the text. You can WhatsApp us as well. It's 03717 2233 44. When we come back, we'll be talking about some of the big odds for today, and we're getting an update from Arsenal.
Premier League teams have got a load of crazy nicknames. Ever wondered where they came from? Some are pretty straightforward. Arsenal are the Gunners because they were founded by a group of munitions workers, and Bournemouth are the Cherries because their old stadium was built right next to a cherry orchard. Then there's Everton. They're dubbed the Toffees, but why? Well, because when the club was formed, just down the road there were 2 local toffee shops. Ipswich Town nicked their nickname off their opponents in the late 90s, Birmingham. The term Tractor Boys was chanted as a way to tease the team about their farming background, but they started using it themselves as a way to cheer on the team in victory instead. Take that, Birmingham. Let's head to Leicester, famous for more than just a red, well, orangey cheese and Jamie Vardy. Leicestershire's also the birthplace of fox hunting, hence the Foxes. Crystal Palace's nickname came from an extreme makeover. They were having a nightmare run in the 70s, and when they were relegated, their manager, Malcolm Allison, wasn't having it. I know what will make us better, he thought, a new nickname. The Strong and Deadly Eagle sounded like a pretty good bet. And there's more to that story. Brighton used Palace's nickname to inspire their own. Ooh, bird, they thought. Let's just pick a different one for us. And so, in a heated match between the two teams back in 1976, when Palace fans began chanting "Eagles, Eagles," Brighton fans had the perfect reply: "Seagulls, Seagulls." So next time the away end's chanting their crazy nickname, you'll now know exactly where it came from.
Right, 12:30 today, Arsenal begin their pre-season schedule. They take on AC Milan in Singapore, and Ian Abrahams has the team news for us. Hello, Ian.
Hi Sam, yes, Mikel Arteta has included one of his summer signings from the start of their first pre-season game in Singapore. That's Christian Norgard, so on the bench, and Martin Zubimendi and also Kepa. Kai Havertz starts for the first time in an Arsenal 11 since February, but Gabriel, who is back training, isn't included. He's rested. So Arsenal line up with Raya in goal. It's White, Saliba, Calafiore and Zinchenko across the back. Norgard, Rice and Wanyeri is 3 in midfield with Martinelli and Havertz and Saka, who is the captain, up front for Arsenal today. Plenty on the bench. I expect them to change all 11 at half-time. It's Arsenal against AC Milan in Singapore, and we start at 12:30.
And we'll keep you updated here on talkSPORT. It's time to catch up now with the latest odds, all thanks to BetMGM.
It's showtime on talkSPORT with BetMGM. Get ready for the golden era of sports betting. Visit betmgm.co.uk or download the app. 18+gambleaware.org.
I'm delighted to say we're joined by Sean Martin from BetMGM to look at today's top sporting events and discuss the latest odds. Sean, much to your annoyance, Rangers won by 2-0 last night. We were pretty happy for them.
Morning, guys. Yeah, 2-0 Rangers was a 7-1 shot, and look, fair play to them. They do manage to get some good results in Europe. Let's see how they do in the second leg, but obviously for me, I'm more concerned with the Champions path to qualification come early August.
Boxing has been dominating the news this week. We'll hear from Frank Warren very shortly. What have you made of the fallout of the Usyk-Dubois fight?
Yeah, I've been pretty much consumed by boxing chat since Saturday night, really. Usyk-Dubois outcome wasn't something we really saw coming, was it, Simon? I mean, you went with Dubois. You did say heart over head, admittedly. Yeah. And I always said if there's a stoppage, it will probably be Dubois, and if it's points, it will probably be Usyk. As it is, Usyk to win in the fifth came in at around 22-1. A few dozen BetMGM punters backed that, so absolutely fair play to them for that. In the aftermath, I've gone and got a heap of different fights priced up, Simon. So basically, what do you want to see next for Usyk? Is it Parker, Atoma, Fury? Does he do a Calzaghe, a Ward, a Marciano, just call it there undefeated?
Well, for Joe Parker, I would speak on behalf of Joe Parker because I think he deserves his opportunity. I think he's been sort of ridden roughshod over, had been dealt a bad hand, and I think that ultimately I'd like to see Joe Parker get his world title shot. I doubt he's going to get against Usyk. I think conventional wisdom is suggesting Usyk's going to vacate, and then Parker might have to fight XYZ, whether that's Ajit Kabayel or someone else, for a belt. I kind of feel there's a part of me that, I mean, people think I don't admire Alexander Usyk. I think that's a stupid analysis because, of course, you admire him. He's absolutely phenomenal in every aspect. Just because you want a Brit to win and try to make a case for it doesn't mean you don't respect the person that's at the very top of the tree. I'd like to see him potentially stop boxing because I think he's done everything he needs to do. You look at these fighters and you look at the legacy of what happens to them after the events, and now, of course, the monetary side of things is so different now that they've sealed themselves economically for generations. But he's such a brilliant athlete, such a brilliant sportsman. I don't think there's anyone out there at this moment in time that comes anywhere near him. Irrespective of whether I like Joe Parker to fight him, I think Alexander Usyk would beat Joe Parker. And I don't really want him to hang around until Moses Atuma comes like a wrecking ball through the system and puts him on his backside. I don't want to see that for Usyk. There's no guarantee that would be the case anyway. But I'm more in the camp of thinking Usyk's done everything he needs to do. He's beaten everybody, and there's really no one left to beat except the argument that maybe Joe Parker hasn't had his shot and maybe should be given it. So I suppose the answer to your question is Parker versus Usyk, but commercially, I don't think that brings big numbers.
What odds do BetMGM have on Usyk's potential next fight?
Yeah, well, I heard a bit of Joseph Parker on Top Boxing with you, Simon. I thought he came across well, as he usually does. He, as you say, he's the first mandatory, the WBO, the first body that can move for a title defence. I do think it's a far more intriguing fight now than it would have been a few years ago with how good Parker's looked under Andy Lee. 13-4 for Parker to win that if it happens, so just over 3-1, even though I heard him say the man himself thinks Usyk will vacate as well. In terms of Moses Atoma, I mean, I'm sure you saw Turkey Al Sheikh's tweet post-fight about Atoma. We've got him 13-5, so just over 2.5 to 1. Understandable outsider. A few of us were actually debating it this morning, like, is it too soon? Presuming he gets past Dylan White in a few weeks, he'll be 21 by the time that fight rolls around. Then again, Mike Tyson was 20 when he won a world title against Trevor Berbick. There's also Kabayel, probably the least profile, but arguably just as intriguing. Indeed. And then a third fight with Fury as well. Usyk's 2-7, Fury 5-2. But for that one, the real question there is, what are your thoughts on Fury essentially trying to speak a trilogy fight into existence at 2-0 down? Do you even want to see it?
Well, I mean, look, Tyson has said that he's watched the fights back 250 times. One might suggest that he needs to get over it and get on with it. His argument that he's won those fights is ludicrous. No one thinks he won the fights. Frank will make a case that they were closer. I think there were compelling outcomes for Usyk in both instances. I think Tyson was far less in the fight in the second fight. I don't see the necessity for a third one. The world doesn't evolve around Tyson Fury, although there is huge charisma that he brings, huge engagement, huge interest. I think the real fight that people want to see, and I'm not saying that I'm one of them, but I can understand the interest, is Fury versus Joshua. Lennox Lewis was talking about it the other day. He thinks it's a necessary dust-up and compared it to him against Frank Bruno. I would argue that's different. When he fought Frank Bruno, they were both fighters on their way up rather than fighters potentially levelling off on the way down.
But something's happening, isn't it? Because he's just Netflix have just commissioned this new series of the Fury show.
Yeah.
So, and they've just started recording that now. So something's in the offing.
Well, the money's in the room. I mean,
because they're building up to something. They don't do that unless he's building up to something.
Without Saudi inflation, you've got fighters now fighting. The money that Usyk and Dubois will have gotten for the fight on Saturday is nowhere near the kind of money that Fury has earned in previous fights or Joshua has earned. If you look at Fury's accounts that were just filed last year, he's got assets of 185 million quid before you even take into consideration the 75 million quid he got for the second Usyk fight.
Wow.
Yeah. For what it's worth, Fury Joshua, 4-1 on Fury and 3-1 for Joshua. I think I agree with you. It's different from the Bruno example where they were on their way up. It's more like different weight, but Mayweather Pacquiao 5-6 years after when we actually would have liked to have seen it.
Yeah, too right. We will see England in the final of the European Championships on Sunday night after a dramatic win over Italy last night. What are their odds of getting over the line against Spain or Germany?
Lionesses were 4-1 start of the tournament, now into 7-4 to lift the trophy on Sunday. I'm curious though, Sam, I heard you and Matt Gibson basically not giving Italy a sniff yesterday. Did you back Italy and cash out at all like you did with Sweden last week?
I did do that with Sweden. I didn't do it with Italy actually last night. What I wanted to do last night, if I'm completely honest, I couldn't get on a bet on Chloe Kelly to score after the teams were announced. So I was messing around. I couldn't do it. That's what I wanted to do because I thought at some stage tonight she is going to score. And she did in the end. She made a difference once again. Ajimang obviously making a big difference too. Look, I didn't think they started particularly well. They haven't started well in many of the games that they played at this tournament, but they finished the game strongly. And that superior level of mental resilience and fitness that takes them right to the very end does hold them in good stead. Germany have got that in their locker. We've already seen that from their display against France. And Spain obviously are the team to beat. Whoever they end up getting on Sunday, it is going to be difficult. But one or two things is going to happen. They're either going to do what they always do and just about get over the line and win it, and it's going to be dramatic and we're all going to enjoy it, or they could end up in a situation where they end up getting beat well if they play poorly as they did in some of the games at this tournament against a high-class opposition.
Yeah, well, as I say, England 7-4 to retain the trophy. As for who they'll play, well, it's Germany versus Spain tonight, third against second in the world rankings. The record Euros winners against the reigning world champions. History actually very much favours the Germans. They're getting into their 11th Euros semi in the last 12 editions, I think it is. Never lost to Spain. But this Spain team just very much the team of the moment and of the past couple of years. They're 12-25. The pre-tournament favourite Spain to win in 90 minutes. Quite a large 5-1 actually for the Germans to do the business in normal time. Simply to qualify, you're looking at 13-4 Germany and 11-50 for Spain, guys.
Yeah, 8-time winners of the European Championships, Germany. Spain have never won it, but they are the world champions. The World Match Play Darts in Blackpool continues tonight. What's going to happen?
Yeah, the final four last 16 ties tonight. 9 of the top 16 seeds already out, including BetMGM Premier League champion Luke Humphries. Can actually see a decent or a potentially decent path to the final for World Youth Champion Jan van Veen. He was 33-1 pre-tournament, came into 11-1. Now after last night's win, he's already into the quarters. He's 13-2 for a first major title. Some big names on the stage tonight. 11-10 tournament favourite Luke Littler. He's really short odds on against Jermaine Wattimena. Aside from that one, there are 3 matches I would say a bit harder to call. Michael van Gerwen 39-20 outsider to beat Josh Rock, who's absolutely flying this year. Former UK Open champ Andrew Gildings, maybe surprisingly 13-8 underdog against Dirk van Dijvenbode, so perhaps a bit of value there. We've also got Gerwin Price, 12-25 favourite to beat Chris Dobie, though they actually won 2 apiece in their 4 Premier League meetings this year. Not necessarily a straightforward one. You've got just under 2.5-1 for the 4 favourites to win tonight, and that Dobie Price match is 7-4 to be the game with the most 180, so potential avenue to look at there as well, guys.
Cheers, Sean. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. That was a look at the latest odds, all thanks to BetMGM. Visit BetMGM or download the app, 18+, begambleaware.org.
It's showtime on talkSPORT with BetMGM. Keep things golden with responsible play at BetMGM.co.uk. 18+, gambleaware.org.
And you're listening to Sam Matterface and Simon Jordan. We're on talkSPORT with Selco Builders Warehouse. Check out this month's real deals at selcobw.com. And we were discussing boxing there with Sean Martin, and we're going to hear from Frank Warren next. He wasn't happy with Tony Bellew's comments that Daniel Dubois quit against Alexander Usyk. We'll do that next. Right, let's crack on and get over to Manchester, where England and India are embarking on the fourth test. It is the first day, it's the first session. And how have India started? Here's Sam Allard.
They've started very well in overcast conditions. 31 without loss. KRL's got 17. Jaiswal has 12. Chris Wokes has bowled 6 overs, none for 23. The figures don't look great on paper, but he's bowled a lot better than those figures suggest. Beating the outside edge of the bat on at least half a dozen occasions in the opening 45 minutes. The best ball was going around the wicket to Jaiswal, angling into the left-hander, then nipped away off the seam, beat the outside edge and beat the bat as well. So Wokes unlucky not to have at least one wicket this morning. Archer at the other end has kept things pretty economical, going for just 7 runs from his first 5 overs. We've just had a first change for England. Archer out, Bryden Cars into the attack. India, though, will be happy with their start, being asked to bat first. KRL's got 19, Jaiswal's got 12, India 33 without loss.
After Tony Bellew said that Daniel Dubois could have made the count if he really wanted to against Alexander Usyk, Dubois' promoter Frank Warren was on Drive yesterday and he responded to those comments.
Well, Tony Bellew's been a hater from day one with Daniel. He got knocked down twice. You know, in one hand, everybody's saying Usyk's a modern-day great. What great punches he threw, and on the other hand, saying why didn't he stand up after getting caught with these two phenomenal punches, which he did after one of them, got up and got knocked down again. What do you expect? The referee counted him out. He walked back to the corner. That was it. Why did he walk back to the corner? Well, where is he supposed to go after the referee stops? Go to a neutral corner or go to Usyk's corner? What planet are all these people on? You know, it's just so pathetic. I find it. I've got sometimes I look and hear what people are saying, and I just find it baffling.
What do you make of the comments?
Well, Frank, I think if he was being entirely honest, would be disappointed in Daniel's performance. I think he would have expected more.
Hence why Don Charles thought he was going to have the riot act read to him when he came in yesterday.
I think that obviously there's some rancour between him and Tony Bellew, and there's some rancour between him and Carl Froch, and these conversations tend to invoke a reaction that if you disagree with some people, they say you're a hater. I think there is questions about Daniel's desire to get up. The referee counted him out. Yes, no, I know Frankie's not going to walk to any other corner, but it's the manner in which he walked to the other corner and the fact he was able to walk to the other corner that people are questioning in an undisputed heavyweight championship of the world. If you ask Frank in a different guise, I suspect, without being the promoter of Daniel Dubois, making sure that Daniel Dubois' best interests are being protected, Frank would probably say, I was surprised to see the towel going. I was disappointed with Daniel's performance and a variety of other things. But for the purpose of that conversation, he has to be robust about defending his fighter because he's got to protect his asset. He's got 3 years left of the relationship with his kid. He wants to make sure that he rebuilds him. So piling in and allowing Tony Bellew and other people to have a free shot, questioning a narrative that once seeded, you know what it's like, Sam, a lie's halfway around the world before the truth even got his boots on. Yeah. It's been allowed to develop in people's minds that Daniel Dubois has a quit culture, quit against Joe Joyce. The caveat for that was his corner should have taken him out and he shouldn't have had to take the knee himself and let his broken orbital socket be determined by himself rather than the corner. Yeah. The idea that he quit against Usyk in the second fight because he again took a knee off the back of a jab, albeit it was after 9 tumultuous rounds, people will say, and a certain breed of person will say, you've got to be carried out in your shield. And there was an argument for that. There's also an argument for the health and well-being of a fighter. And so I understand his point of view. I think Tony is not wrong to question it. They questioned it before. David Hay and people piled in on Daniel about the Joe Joyce fight. I was at the fight.
Yeah.
I was disappointed. It was in COVID. The atmosphere wasn't there. The most noise was coming from Dubois' family up in the rafters. And he wasn't.
Was that your
That was at Mansion House in Westminster, yeah. And it was a very strange event. And Daniel looked very much befuddled by the fact there was no real ring walk because it was about 15 yards from the dressing room to the ring.
It was an odd arena.
And there was nobody there to give any atmosphere. I think Dom came in, and as much as he could say things, I think he felt that things need to change, cultures need to change. I think he needs to work with his fighter more closely with that without other people interrupting.
Did you hear anything after yesterday's show that sort of come out from that debate that we were having? Because I noticed that there was a lot of chatter about it. Did anyone contact you afterwards and develop the story a little bit further?
No, yeah, you would always get the digital guys that will try and get in touch with you to try and find out what they can get content for them, whether it be the IFLs as well, which I wouldn't give them because they can get their own content and they can misrepresent ours without me contributing to it. I think that lots of people will have views on it and lots of people have had discussions about it. I mean, Don Charles and Frank Warren are the most interesting people to listen to besides Daniel Dubois, because they actually are there. They're almost first party. So Frank can talk about it more explicitly. And Don Charles was, I think, pretty candid yesterday. And I think he's very emotive. And I think the best reaction that we saw yesterday and the most engaging reaction and the one that will get the most views is Don Charles leaning across the table to you saying, I'll tell you who says we swallowed it. Let them see who gets swallowed when we fight them. He means Parker and Okoli.
I thought it was a powerful moment there. And I said to you at the time, I think that's the moment that will be the one that people remember from that interview.
The questions have to ask, and they have to be asked, and whether the right time to ask them is now, is why Daniel Dubois didn't do things that people expected him to do. And one of the things people expect him to do is if you get Usyk into a corner where he doesn't want to be, and you've got him against the ropes in the corner, I know he might get out. I know that he might produce an outcome that necessarily a fighter lesser than his capabilities couldn't do. But people expected Daniel Dubois to do the very thing that he didn't do in the first round, which is jump on Usyk. There was an opportunity, you've got to take it. Some would say, and Don would say in a conversation, well, you've got to take your time, you've got to wait for the right moment. That was a moment. And it would have created momentum in a fight and an intention. And it might have changed the direction. It might not. Daniel Dubois might have walked in and got one in that particular moment. But the fact he didn't, when people expected that of him, when people expected this strong bully to come into the ring and didn't expect Usyk to be able to do what he did. But again, it can't be taken away from Alexander Usyk. I see people, because I've expressed a partisanship towards British fighters, suggesting that somehow or another I demean Alexander Usyk. First of all, I think he's a world-class athlete, a world-class fellow. I've sat in a room with him, I think it's brilliant.
The impression that I've got from you over the course of the last couple of days, you're just disappointed with the way that Dubois performed. It's got nothing to do with Usyk, it's got to do with Dubois.
Yeah, and I think there is a feeling that, I mean, and they won't say it out loud, I think there's a feeling in Dubois' camp that whilst we all laud and applaud Usyk, he is beatable. And they won't say it out loud.
He showed that in the first fight, though, between the two, didn't he?
He did and he didn't. I think the same ails that Daniel had in the first fight were there in the second fight. I don't, obviously people are going to downplay.
We're talking about letting the hands go.
Yeah. And that's the conversation I had with Joseph Parker, which is why Joseph Parker now is so much more effective. I know it's conflicting to hear somebody that's never laced the glove, that hasn't been in a ring, talking about boxing sometimes the way I do, and I know that they think that sometimes I haven't got entitlement to do it. But the fact of the matter is that you see things in a certain way, you're entitled to an opinion. I think Joseph Parker now is a different fighter. He himself admits it, that Andy Lee has brought a different dimension to his game. The nutritionist guys have brought him a different level of intensity and fitness that enables him to perhaps step in more than he did before, and he lets his hands go. He looks a more formidable fighter. Now, it may just be that Alexander Usyk is so brilliant, so untouchable, and no one can lay a glove on him. But I did expect more from Daniel on Saturday.
A bit of breaking transfer news for you that's reached us in the last few seconds here on talkSPORT. Bayern Munich are willing to pay up to £70 million for Luis Diaz. talkSPORT understands Bayern are working on a new proposal for the want-away Liverpool star, having a £58.5 million bid rejected. The Premier League champion's stance has always been that Diaz is not for sale, but that could change depending on just how high Bayern bid and if they can source a suitable replacement. So that breaking news in the last few moments that Bayern Munich are willing to pay £70 million for Luis Diaz. talkSPORT understands. Next, with Marcus Rashford joining Barcelona expected today and Raheem Sterling available at a knockdown price, we'll look at what's gone wrong for two of England's former players.
Who would have thought a sporting event's halftime show could have a bigger impact than the game itself? Well, the Super Bowl halftime show does exactly that. In 2024, Usher brought in an audience of 180 million worldwide, the biggest ever in the event's history. But how did singing and dancing get to be the centerpiece of America's biggest sporting event? The first edition of the Super Bowl was held in 1967 when the Green Bay Packers beat the Kansas City Chiefs in Los Angeles. Because of the sheer size of the event, organisers wanted to put on entertainment at halftime for the fans in the stadium. It was a display of marching bands, dancers and pure USA patriotism, and that was the theme that followed for years. In the 1980s, the Walt Disney Company got involved and we started seeing some interesting and questionable displays. But we got our first glimpse of halftime shows to come in '93 when none other than Michael Jackson stunned fans with his 15-minute medley of his own smash hits. When he walked out on stage, he had to wait for the crowd's cheers to die down for about 2 minutes before even starting his first song. Diana Ross, Gloria Estefan, Phil Collins all starred in their own shows, as did Aerosmith, who performed alongside NSYNC. Things got a little bit out of hand in 2004 when Justin Timberlake and Janet Jackson produced perhaps the most famous or infamous wardrobe malfunction in history. Shows from the likes of Prince, Lady Gaga and Beyoncé are considered by critics as the best. To give you an idea of the scale of things, Rihanna's 2023 halftime show included roughly 800 people. These ranged from backing dancers to stage crew to camera operatives broadcasting to millions around the world. The whole stage for that show was built in roughly 8 minutes and was broken down and cleared away in the same time. The acts perform for free nowadays, even though the experts reckon it costs around $13 million to put on Rihanna's show. Artists know they'll rocket up the charts in the following weeks. Rihanna's average sales improved by 140% in the months following her performance. The Super Bowl halftime show will be a fixture in pop culture for years to come. So the question is, who next?
It's talkSPORT, Sam Matterface alongside Simon Jordan, and Barcelona have agreed a deal with Manchester United to take Marcus Rashford on loan with an option to purchase him permanently for £26 million. Is there going to be any Manchester United fan that misses Marcus Rashford and sad to see him depart, or is that ship sailed? 03717223344. You can text us 81089. Is Barcelona the correct club for him to regain his consistency after Rashford scored double figures in only one of his past 4 seasons when he was in the midst of his contract negotiations? Would some suggest that it's a choice that he struggles to be consistent? Actually, do you know what? I was going through the figures last night of Marcus Rashford's career, and it's amazing, really. He has only got into double figures once in the last 4 seasons, and he got 30 goals in 56 games in 22.
I think
23.
what people should do, I mean, there's a lot of vitriol every time Marcus Rashford comes on this show. The name Marcus Rashford comes on this show, Man United fans phone in and tell us, me and Jim, they categorically want him gone. I think we should lament the loss of a significant talent. I don't think he was ever at the level that people built him up to be, but I think he was a very good player.
Talent there.
But we should lament the loss of the culture of Man United, which enabled a player to lose his way.
So is that what you're blaming it on? Because it's interesting, isn't it? Because if you look over the course of his career,
I blame it on the industry.
There's 22 out of 44 games, 22 goals in 44 games in 1920. 21, he got 57 games with 21 goals, had a dip in 21-22 after the European Championships and all the stuff that happened there. 56 games, 30 goals in 22-23 was absolutely superb.
But after the European Championships, do you remember after the European Championships, he came back from the European Championships, he hadn't been fit a lot of the season, went into the European Championship squad, came into that, after the European Championships, the club allowed him to go on holiday for 2 weeks
and then
have a shoulder injury, which to me is...
Well, not a shoulder injury, surgery.
Backside of that face. Hang on a second, get your priorities right. I think a lot of the... Listen, you have to lay the responsibility for the opportunities that have been not taken by the player at his own door. But if you don't create a culture for these young men to respect and value the opportunities they've got, they get distracted by outside influences.
But there's personal responsibility to continue to deliver even when the team is struggling, isn't there?
Of course there is. But we know that there are very few leaders in football. There are more often people that are followers. Unless you create a strong environment where strong leadership blossoms, and that means that the lemmings, of which I think Rashford has a propensity to be one, follow in the way that you want them to follow, you lose them. And you lose them to distractions. They get involved with outside influences. They've got more interest in what they're doing in their social life. They make judgment calls like going out to nightclubs in China Whites when they've got smashed by Man City. They make the decision for their birthday. They make the decision to go and not turn up for training and go out on the whiz in Northern Ireland and things of that nature. And these are things that are clearly being tolerated by culture. Alongside that, you've got the distractions and the wealth and the affluence that football. You've got the culture that people are not allowed to be told the truth, because if you tell them the truth, they can't cope with it. It's only good news that they can hear. That's why you don't build resilience and you don't build leadership into sport. Now, I think he'll be successful at Barcelona, because I think the clear thing for Marcus Rashford is to get away from Manchester United, for Man United's sake and for Marcus Rashford's sake, and we should lament that because he is a good player. I've always maintained...
And the Premier League is losing a good player.
Yeah, and they may gain him back. As a result of going to Barcelona, being in a club that's far bigger than he is right now, far more successful than he is currently being at Manchester United, with a dressing room of people that are far bigger than him, that are proven winners.
Yeah, but the only caveat I would put on all of that is that I look at some of his contemporaries, and I don't think that you would have said at the outset of his career that Harry Kane was going to be a leader. I don't think at the beginning of his career...
I don't think he's a leader.
Well,
I think he's a great player. I don't think he's a great leader.
I think what he does is he leads by example.
Yeah.
And his example is that even when Tottenham, who had comparably had more difficult situations going on than Manchester United, they've changed manager a lot more often, and they've struggled in league positions in a similar fashion. He still delivered. He still delivered.
But that's a form of leadership.
Season.
Spurs never won anything under him, and in competitions like the Champions League in 2019, they didn't even turn up in the final against Liverpool.
Yeah, but he always turned up.
Well, he didn't turn up in that game. And
he was injured.
And there's been instances in the other games where he hasn't scored against the bigger opposition that question him. But I don't think you can question Harry Kane as a footballer. I think you can question him as a leader. It depends what kind of leaders you want. I think Antonio Conte made very clear to Daniel Levy as part of his little departing salvo that he thought there was not a single leader in that dressing room.
But my comparison is the fact that even when Tottenham was struggling, he would still deliver. So he didn't use the excuse of the environmental problems for not delivering on a personal level.
Yeah, okay, but that's removing the realities of individualism out of the equation. Everyone's got different personalities.
Absolutely.
Harry Kane's journey was a very different journey. Harry Kane wasn't lauded and applauded at 17, 18 years of age and arriving on a stage where suddenly he was the saviour. Harry Kane was punted out to Leyton Orient and Norwich City.
Absolutely, and there's definitely something in the rise of Marcus Rashford, which was unexpected. Listen, everyone thought he was a good player, but he was thrown in on an evening, on a Thursday night. I was there at Old Trafford the night I was commentating on the game, where he wasn't even on the team sheet, and then all of a sudden he's in the starting 11. He scores a goal on the Thursday night, he scores a goal on the Sunday afternoon, and all of a sudden he's a superstar within 4 days, and that wasn't expected.
And there it is, and that's exactly right. In this country, we have a propensity to get people, build them up to a stage where they can't be built up any further, and then whittle them down, and also put them into positions where they're not actually at. I've always been critical of the observations that Marcus Rashford is a world-class footballer. I think he's a very good footballer, but I don't think he's a world-class footballer. And so when you're judged by those set of standards and you're constantly being pulled down as a result of it, it has a diminishing effect. But I also think he's responsible for it in terms of his decision. I've listened to some of the podcasts where he gets a little soft music in the background playing the whining methodology of how hard his life is, and most people will find it difficult to relate to. I also agree that just because you do a different job and you think footballers should be walking around with a smile on their face because they've cracked it and won the lottery every day isn't the real world, because it's their job. But I think Rashford will find his... And one of the reasons why I think he'll find his feet is there's huge motivation for him to do so. He won't be in the World Cup squad next year unless he makes an impression upon Barcelona. Well, and he tends to be motivated when those things come around.
And we want him to be, because we want the best Marcus Rashford available for England when it comes to next summer.
If he's better than what's on offer.
Yeah.
We don't want the illusion of what Marcus Rashford can do. We want the reality of what he does, because a lot of people created a narrative because it's a way to beat Man United up, which is, it was a raging success at Aston Villa. What is wrong at Man United? No, he wasn't a raging success at Aston Villa. He had a few decent games. And certainly people, and I heard Andy Townsend talking about his away performance against PSG as being pretty poor, albeit the home performance was better. I think he's a good player. I think he's very fortunate to have landed at one of the elite football clubs in Europe, because I think currently with his performance, with his attitude, with his disposition, with the way that he's left Man United and the way that he did interviews with Henry Winter last December talking about leaving, I think all lead you to the conclusion that this is a player that potentially brings more problems than he brings solutions. But in Barcelona's defence, they've got a dressing room full of people that are far bigger than Marcus Rashford right now, and they've got him for 2 and 6 beside his wages.
Talking of players that have had a fall from grace, Raheem Sterling didn't manage to get many minutes or make an impact at Arsenal on loan last season. He struggled at Chelsea in the previous campaigns. He's 2 weeks back into pre-season and working on the basis that I suppose Chelsea at some point are going to present him with an option to leave the football club. I mean, at this point, is there an argument for just letting him leave on a free? Because, I mean, I know Chelsea are sort of looking for 20 million quid for him, but with a little bit of interest from Germany and maybe in Juventus, the chance of sort of moving him on must be a priority for them. He's got 2 years left on the contract, which is worth over 300 grand a week.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they're aware of that. And they'll move him along in due course, ideally in terms that suit them best. And of course, if there is no appetite, desire, or regard for Raheem Sterling for any kind of transfer fee, Raheem Sterling's got to come to the party. Depends what he wants to bring to bear. You know, we're being led to believe that Rashford's taken some sort of salary sacrifice of some shape or description to go to Barcelona. I'm not sure that's right, but let's say he has. It shows a propensity to do something. I'm not surprised. I never liked Raheem Sterling the way he left Liverpool. I thought that was not engineered the right way. I think he's a good player. I think he's another one of those players that's been built up to a level that I don't think he was at. I think he's had good games for England. I think there's a constant thread of managers that are prepared to marginalise him. Pep did it at Manchester City.
Yeah, but he also embraced him for a long time too.
To a degree, he did.
Top scorer there one season, over 30 goals.
I accept that there were times, as I said, there was certain times when he was very successful at Man City, but the bulk of the time at Man City, and at certain key times, he wasn't as visible as one would anticipate someone has achieved some of the things that he's achieved and some of the potential that people thought that Raheem Sterling had, alongside the ability that they dictated that we should all acknowledge. But this last 2 or 3 years has been a disaster for him. He moved to Chelsea and it wasn't successful.
No.
He didn't set the stage, and he goes to Arsenal almost as if Arsenal went, oh, well, we might as well have you. It's a last-minute thing. We'll have you.
I mean, it was a great deal for them. From what I understand, the mechanics of the deal were very favourable for Arsenal. But, I mean, from his own personal perspective, having watched him as much as I did when he was playing last season, he looked like a player devoid of confidence.
He did.
And that's a real shame, because there was a point where he was full of confidence and he would actually unsettle defences because of that confidence.
But there's a part of me that would say, and it might be people think mean-spirited and belongs in a different era, that if you're in a position where you are as good as you believe yourself to be, you've got to overcome these adversities. You've got to overcome this. You've got to build in some resilience and get yourself into a position where you demand the opportunity to be successful again. And I think sometimes these players and these people in life that we lionise, when it comes to bumps in the road, they aren't quite what you think they are. Because it isn't just a reflection of how well you do when everything's going your way.
We look after them enough? That's the question. I mean, I'm looking back at that 2018 team, at 2020.
I think they're looked after.
Team.
I think they're looked after too much.
A 21 team, and I'm thinking, you know what? There was so much potential in a load of those players that after those tournaments have just disappeared.
Well, I mean, listen. If you're talking about Dele Alli and people of that nature, they're making their own choices.
Sterling,
there's so many distractions.
Rashford, Foden have not kicked on from where you expect them to be after that European Championship.
I think they're all individuals and they're all unique in their circumstances, and I don't think you can put them as a homogenous group and say that this group of players hasn't kicked on, and they all haven't for different reasons.
But they all come from the same team.
Sure, but to argue that they're not looked after, I think is a foolish argument.
I didn't argue it. I asked the question.
Or to advance it. That they might not be looked after, because the one thing that footballers are is overindulged and looked after, and then perhaps not told enough of what they need to build character.
That's not looking after someone. Looking after someone is telling them, actually, you need to do this and you need to do that and you need to improve this part of your character.
That's a different argument then.
That's looking after someone just as much as the other side of it.
Is the industry honest about building character into players by telling them the truth? I would suggest it's not, because we don't allow it to be the case. And when you see, like I saw last summer, I didn't think that the media were hysterical about England's performances. I didn't think they were vilifying it yet. The England players came out, and specifically Jude Bellingham, with petted lips about the way they were being treated.
I was on the touchline after the first game, and we were doing a wrap-up of the show, of the game, and someone said to us, well, you have to reference the fact that they've called out negativity in relation to the performance, and we were like, what?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Oh, absolutely. So from that point of view, it's one thing being able to do the right things. What you're saying is by looking after people, it means doing the right things by them. And some
Doing
of that,
the right things,
and some
yeah.
of that might be telling them the truth.
Yeah.
Right? But then you tell people the truth, and they don't like it, and they can't cope with it. And it would appear that this generation, perhaps, and I don't want to be too global in my observation, are not capable of it. It's a one-way transaction.
Maybe
all the upside.
some people.
It's like the argument about player welfare. All the upside, no the downside. If you told these footballers 15 years ago that they were going to live the lives that they're living right now, but they'd have to play 60 games a season, you probably wouldn't hear too many of them saying, well, I won't be doing that. If I can get this kind of life, this kind of generational wealth, this kind of adoration, this kind of career opportunity, this kind of diversification to play for bigger football clubs all around the world, these life experiences, but I've got to play 60 games, I'll do that. Now they've got it, well, hang on a second, I'm not doing that. And I think it's all intertwined into a general destabilisation of the way that people in society look at outcomes and resilience and overcoming adversity, and it's not good.
Okay, let's go to the test match, fourth test, day one. England leading the series 2-1, but yet to find the breakthrough against India. Sam Ellard.
Yeah, really good morning session so far for India. Got through the first hour unscathed, 48 without loss. KR Rahul has 32 runs to his name. Jaiswal 14. KR Rahul in the process passing 1,000 test runs in England, just the fifth Indian batsman to do so. Chris Woakes in particular very unlucky this morning. He bowled 8 overs straight, not to pick up a wicket, beating the outside edge on numerous occasions of the India opener's bat. There's also a big LBW appeal on Yashasvi Jaiswal, going around the wicket with the ball angling into left-hander, but there was bat before the ball hit pad. After drinks, Ben Stokes has brought himself into the attack to try and find this first wicket. The opening partnership has put on 48 runs here in Manchester. England searching for that breakthrough.
You're listening to Matterface and Jordan. We're on talkSPORT with Selco Builders Warehouse. Check out this month's real deals at selcobw.com. Arsenal in pre-season action, 12:30 today against AC Milan in Singapore, and we're going to head to the game next. 12:30 this afternoon. We've got Arsenal taking on AC Milan in Singapore. Ian Abrahams is going to be reporting for us on talkSPORT. What can we expect this afternoon, Ian?
Well, we can expect pretty much what we've seen the last 2 or 3 years from Arsenal, certainly from the start. Only Christian Norgard is going to be making his debut. The rest of the summer signings, bar Madueke, who's not actually with the squad as he recovers from the Club World Cup. The other signings, Zibamendi and Kepa, are on the bench. Gyökeres and Mascara are said to be on the way. As for AC Milan, pitiful year for them last year. New manager in Massimiliano Allegri, who we all know, so they're on a rebuilding mission. Arsenal did win a behind closed doors game, Sam, at the weekend, 2-0. Ben White and Kai Havertz with the goals, and both start today.
We've got any news on Victor Gyökeres? Has the man himself, Mikel Arteta, been speaking about that?
Yeah, they're hoping that finally the deal can be done, and they're expecting him to fly out to Singapore for his medical. They do play one more game in Singapore against Newcastle before they then head to Hong Kong for the inverted commas North London derby against Spurs. So I think they're hoping to have him, if not actually in Singapore playing in the Newcastle game, to have had his medical in Singapore and maybe to play some part in the Spurs game. But they're just waiting for permission for him to actually fly to Singapore. The deal with has been done for around about 65 million pounds. So he should become an Arsenal player in the next few days.
Yeah, and I understand that also Christian Mascara is going to be announced as an Arsenal player in the not too distant future as well. Cheers, Ian. Thank you very much. We'll be with you throughout the course of the afternoon. It's taken a long time to get their ducks in a row, but they seem to have done it with Victor Gyökeres now, but it's worth waiting, I suppose, if that's what you've got your eyes on. It was interesting to hear from Mikel Arteta this week. I mean, I watched a press conference. I don't think he said it in this press conference, but he said it, I think, to the written journalists, where he said it's getting more and more competitive each year. He's talking about the Premier League title race. The level is increasing. We know that, so our demands have to increase as well. Every year we see how things develop, and I see the right balance in terms of maturity, experience, youth and hunger, and all these ingredients are there. The thing is that there are another 6, 7, 8 clubs in the league that have the right ingredients to win, and there is only going to be one winner. So we have to focus a lot on the things that we can't control, and we can control the things that we can do to achieve what we want to do at the end of the season. Is he right in his assessment that there will be 8 teams that are competing to win the title, or is it more like 3 or 4 that can do that?
I think it's more like 3 or 4, don't you?
Yeah.
I think there's more teams vying to be in the top 4.
Totally.
Certainly, and I concur with that view. But if he's looking backwards for Arsenal to be a side that's trying to establish itself in the top 4 rather than win the Premier League, then that would be something I would be slightly concerned about if I was an Arsenal fan. I mean, I sit in a studio and share a studio regularly with someone that's not objective about Arsenal at all.
Who could that be?
Martin. But he accepts the point that somewhere along the line we have to move into Arsenal winning things. And whilst we all, and you said it this week, about the progress that's undeniable that Arsenal have made. They've gone from being an irrelevance that was knocking on the door of the outside of the top 6 to a club that's now re-established itself as serious competitors. But it depends. I mean, I can't imagine that the Arsenal hierarchy is unhappy with anything Arteta's doing, because we've seen progress most seasons. Now, we've seen a little bit of regression this season, but that was superseded by the progress in the Champions League. So whilst you were losing the progress and the building inside the Premier League, being a competitive force, amassing a certain amount of points because they were closer in previous years, I expected Arsenal to bridge the gap this season. And of course, with Man City dropping off, no one quite saw Liverpool's ascendancy. But with due respect to Liverpool, I know it's not going to be very popular. I don't think Liverpool were as brilliant as the outcomes dictated. I think some of the other teams dropped away.
Super consistent,
but not as spectacular and as dynamic a side as I've seen previously from Liverpool, but undeniable.
I think that's why they won it.
Probably right. But my main focus on this part of the conversation is to look at what Arsenal didn't do and what they weren't able to achieve. And so with that in mind, it's curious to work out, because my point with that, Kieran, was that he, after browbeating him into generally accepting that somewhere along the line, Arsenal got to win something. You can't keep on talking about potential. You can't keep on talking about progress, because the progress was a little bit sideways this year. He's been given a lot of money, and there's no denying that he's been given inordinate amounts of support. But I think this season if we don't see progress from Arsenal, and progress can only be if you get to a Champions League semi-final, then I suppose you've got to get to a Champions League final. And if you finish second in the league, then I suppose the only thing you can do is win the league. Otherwise, you're not progressing, you're treading water.
Yeah.
And if you start treading water, you start to move backwards. And I don't like the narratives being played out by Arteta about, on one hand, he says great things like, I can only control the things I'm controlling. But there's 8 other teams that could be competing for that league spot.
Yeah, I mean, what I will say is I think you're right. They did progress last year because not only did they continued to finish consistently second in the Premier League, but they also progressed further and further in Europe. So that is a progression, I think. But I think stepping over the line now is, as you say, lifting trophies. And Gyökeres gives him a different dimension because if he is as good as his goal record in Portugal suggests, then he will get more goals, they will get more goals, and that will push them closer to whoever is the eventual champion.
It is the panacea, because it's being billed as the panacea. The big thing that everyone says about Arsenal, and we talked about the fact they didn't score enough goals last year, but the previous year, January to December, they scored 80-odd goals with the formation that they had. And by changing the formation to have a point man like Gyökeres, you might change the construct of the team and it might be disadvantageous. It might be the panacea, because everyone's saying, for the love of God, like with Chelsea recently, why don't you buy a centre-forward that can score goals? Because it's clear to everybody, you keep buying wide players, you keep buying midfield players, but why don't you buy a centre-forward? Because the common ail that you've got is you haven't got someone up top. Chelsea had Nicholas Jackson and Arsenal bought Havertz. And no one could understand why everyone else seemed to have the 2020 vision and Arteta doesn't. It must mean that Arteta sees it slightly differently. Now he's aligned himself with that particular outcome.
Or it means that they were just waiting for the striker that they wanted. So in January, when everyone was saying buy a striker, he was like, well, actually, I can't do it at this moment in time because my sporting director's left. The plans aren't in place, and we're not going to be able to get him out of Sporting Lisbon at this time, but we will be able to do it this summer.
Is a new phenomenon that's only just come out of the ether.
He was talked about last summer, so...
Yeah, not at the same level he's being talked about now. And some of that phenomenon has been elevated by the arrival of Ruben Amorim into Manchester United, and it's drawn attention because this is a player, I mean, his goal-scoring record over the last couple of years is phenomenal. This is a player that didn't cut it in other football clubs inside the English pyramid, that's gone over to Sporting, smashed it, and is now coming back.
Coventry.
To a degree, yeah, and obviously some people would say that Coventry were very fortunate to have gotten some of the fees that they've got and maybe even cashed in their sell-on early because they knew that it was going to be sold this summer and funded some of Coventry's ambition last year. And whether he'll translate into it, but the argument was last January was about what Arsenal needed to do when they lost Havertz. They got injuries left, right and centre to Gabriel Jesus, who they thought probably was going to get them through the January window, tried to put in offers for Ollie Watkins and didn't really get anywhere with it because Ollie Watkins' offer wasn't really a meaningful offer that Aston Villa were ever going to consider, were they?
No. Right, okay. I've actually, on Premier League All Access this week, the podcast on talkSPORT's YouTube channel, and via the app you can get that as well. We do a deep dive into the Arsenal squad, and if you look at the squad in a detailed way, you see how he's formulating his plan for next season. We explain that. Mosquera and Gyökeres are going to be the 5th and 6th signings of the summer. Arsenal fans, I wonder if you're pleased with that. 03717223344. We're going to look at the top transfer stories next.
not often you associate fan power with Chelsea Football Club, but one of the shining examples of it lies with a group called the Chelsea Pitch Owners. And they've proved to be the thorn in the side of owners past and present who've been dead set on moving stadiums to a larger, more lucrative piece of land. Essentially, the supporters group holds the freehold to the land on which Stamford Bridge sits. Former owner Ken Bates set it up at a time where some unruly property developers tried to evict the club from their ground. In order to prevent this, he established the CPO as a company that owned the pitch and offered the fans the chance to buy a share for £100. As well as that, they also own the rights to the name Chelsea Football Club, so if any owner wants to take them elsewhere, they can't be called Chelsea without the approval from the CPO. Now, in 2011, Roman Abramovich tried and failed to move them away from Stamford Bridge, and this has set a precedent for Todd Bowley and the current power brokers at Chelsea. They know any plan which involves moving from Stamford Bridge will require CPO approval from the now 13,000 fans who own it. There are fans who are concerned that if they stay at the bridge, they'll be left behind their domestic and European rivals who are moving to more commercially successful stadiums. But for the heritage and history lovers, Stamford Bridge is one of the iconic English stadiums, and to move away would be a grave mistake. It might not be as flashy as others, but stadiums like it have something about them that cannot be replaced. One thing's for sure, if Bowley wants to take Chelsea away from their home, he'll have to go through the CPO first.
Should we get a couple of the text messages that have come in? We've been asking for text messages and then forgotten to read them out. So let's get through a couple of them now because lots of people have been getting in touch this morning, and thank you very much. As always, we appreciate it. 1889 on the text, so you can actually WhatsApp us 03717223344. On Rashford, says Gavin, I've always said he was the same level as Wilfried Zaha. That's not a criticism. Because Zaha was absolutely great. But if Rashford had come through at somewhere like Palace, I think the pressure would have been less on his shoulders. Unfortunately, he had a powerful badge on his chest at Manchester United, and it ate him up because the expectations were unrealistic.
Irony in that comparison, isn't it? Because Wilfried Zaha went to Man United and didn't do very well.
No.
I don't know about that. I mean, you can take people. You can only put people into the circumstances that they're in. I think the distractions. I think a lot of Marcus Rashford's problem is the immense affluence and the distractions off the field have created outcomes on the field. And I also think some of the attitude at Man United with a club of that weight and size, some of the cultural shifts, whether it was Ralph Rangnick or whether it was... I know people think that somehow or another I must have... Maybe Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, I slept with my wife or something, but I do think that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and his culture at that football club was the beginning of the erosion of the standards in Man United that started...
I'm going to say knowing Ole definitely didn't do that.
No, but I know what I mean. People have made the observation, what is your problem with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer? You know, did he have it off with your wife or something? No, I think he let standards really creep into Man United that were so poor that ultimately... Yeah, I do. I really do. I look back on it, I think a lot of people do as well.
He walked in to try and repair an atmosphere that was not great.
Granted. And I think that what he did was let lunatics run the asylum.
Maybe let it get too loose, is that your accusation?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe, possibly. You know where Wilf Zaha is now?
I don't actually.
Do you not?
Well, he was in Turkey, wasn't he?
He's at Charlotte FC in the MLS.
I saw that.
And he's doing very well, and they're doing very well. Dean Smith is the manager there.
Right.
They're in the playoff positions in the MLS. They beat big rivals Atlanta United at the weekend, and because
he was at Galatasaray, wasn't he?
He was at Galatasaray, and he ended up going over to the MLS. I think in the end of the January transfer window, so he was there for the start of the season. Anyway, he scored at the weekend, win their big win. So he's doing well.
Wilf came out of my academy, so the last 2 years of my time at Palace, Wilfred was coming through, and he made his debut just as I was leaving the football club. And I think he was, and a lot of people think it as well. Even people like Graham Souness, that I would respect his opinion more than I respect mine on player judgment. Talk about the talent that Wilfried Zaha had, and the fact that he could have played at a much higher level, and probably went to United at the wrong time. Great for Palace because at that time they had no money, and Parish got a wonderful opportunity to sell Wilfried Zaha and get him back for nothing, and then Wilfried Zaha goes and scores a winning goal at Brighton to send us into the playoff final against Watford, which Kevin Phillips scores, and Palace go up.
Great show as always, says Neil. It's not just the Premier League, you know. I'm a Southampton fan and a season ticket holder, and I was paying 30 quid to all away games. Now we have dropped, because the Premier League have a cap on away tickets to £30. Now we've dropped the Championship. I've just played £44.50 for my first away game at Ipswich. The Championship also needs to bring in £30 for away matches, the cap.
I understand the argument. I mean, there was an argument last year about Accrington Stanley paying Wrexham, and Wrexham putting their ticket prices up for a particular game that most people were infuriated by. They were infuriated by Wrexham because they call them FC Hollywood, and they don't like the fact they're doing what they're doing.
Championship club now.
Indeed. And I'm wrong. My assessment of was wait until they find out what it's like when they've got to put their hands right in their pockets. They're not going to have to put their hands in their pockets. The momentum created by the digital opportunity that's being put around them by Reynolds and the merchandising and the commercial opportunities that are being offered to them might just catapult them into the Premier League.
Well, that's quite smart, right?
It's brilliant. It shows you the connectivity of the world. If you live in a world where Sideshow Bob Jake Paul can make hundreds of millions of pounds by simply putting his gurning face in front of a camera and people want to watch it, then you have to look at the opportunity for a genuine superstar like Ryan Reynolds that translates through massive movies and see the opportunity. I thought that they'd run out of steam. I thought that they wouldn't be able to, and it's still debatable whether they can generate the revenues in the Championship because there's plenty of billionaires in that league as well. But I got a feeling that they will. I've got a feeling that they've got a model in place now that's really Christ, you've got bloody Welsh kits appearing and Wrexham kits appearing in Deadpool movies. The connectivity and the Disneyfication of sport shows you where it's going, and so I wouldn't be surprised if Wrexham as a model, which is another model, another version of a football club ownership, which shows you the way football's going, lands in the Premier League. It's interesting, challenging and different.
Irishman Evan Ferguson, who was touted as maybe the next big thing, has joined Roma today on loan. He had a medical before joining them. They have an option to purchase him for 37 million quid. Well, that's a great question, isn't it? Because he was deemed a well-beater in the making.
Yeah. Got
a couple of injuries and has never really got back to full fitness and never looked like scoring a goal since.
Is it fitness issues, you think?
I don't know. It must be really, and confidence issues as well. I would have thought. I mean, you look at him at West Ham, and you thought, well, this is a great start for him. Graham's there. I mean, I'm not sure that Graham was as big a fan as was made out, which was an odd decision. Yeah, it was an odd decision for him to then go and link up with Graham at the time. But if you're going to West Ham and you are fully fit, and they don't have a striker, and you could possibly be that man, you would have thought that was a perfect move for him. But it just didn't work out. No. It was another situation that hasn't worked out for him. So I do hope that he finds himself in Roma, because this is a guy who has potential. Obviously, he's clearly had potential, but it just hasn't materialised.
Well, the clear comparison is Tammy Abraham, isn't it? In terms of having to come out of Chelsea and go into Italian football.
Yeah,
and
I think that was a shame,
So do I. I think Tammy's a very good player. But I think the interesting comparison is a player that is of a similar ilk to Ferguson is Liam Delap, and he is going in the direction I would have thought Ferguson would have gone in. It might just simply be because he's been able to avoid injuries, but he's a player that I really like. Delap. I think Chelsea have got a real player on their hands there.
Yeah, the producer in my ear started to ask the question about young British players moving abroad. Evan Ferguson is Irish, he's not British, just in case.
Okay.
Alex
make that distinction,
in trouble with suggesting such a thing on Premier League All Access this week, so be careful. More British and Irish young players are going abroad, though, which is worth pointing out, right? because I think for a long period you'd see them, some of the high talents in the game, fester in that under-21 development football, but now they're playing high-class football elsewhere. And if you look at Jamie Gittins, he's an example.
Well, the other leagues are becoming feeder leagues for our players to go into.
Well, maybe, yeah.
And that's fine to some extent.
Because remember, back in the day, we used to all go, all right, we've got a young Spanish player who's coming over to our league. Now it's sort of the other way around.
Well, the only problem with that I don't like is that we sell our talent over to there and then we buy it back at twice the price and fund their league.
That is exactly what we do. I mean, can you imagine, right? It's so funny when you go and work in other leagues or you speak to people from other leagues and you talk about these big transfers that happen in England, and they all just laugh and go, do you know what, we never see transfers like that between our clubs.
Absolutely.
Between our clubs, it's like, here's a fiver, you take a fiver, we'll just switch them over. Whereas
we're a registered charity.
When we send you a player, you'll pay us 30 million for it. It's crazy, right?
Yeah, it's Premier League added tax, isn't it?
Oh, it's very, very strange. There's a few other deals that are doing the rounds today. Wolves' deal for the Spanish defender Marc Pubil has been hijacked, has it? But Atletico Madrid, they're 13
Why are you doing this? Where's Crook? Has he been harpooned or something?
Do you know what? It's interesting you should say that, because we did ask him to come on today, and he said no, he was too busy. I think he's doing a day
Eating
trip.
burritos or whatever he's doing.
He's doing a day trip to...
he's on a boat, isn't he?
No, yesterday was on the boat.
What was he?
Yesterday was on the boat, and he sent me a lot of videos about being on the boat.
Right.
I don't know whether it was...
Was it a big boat? Was he positioned on the boat in the right position so it didn't capsize?
It was a ferry. He was... He was. I couldn't work out if it was 3 sheets to the wind or he was getting his sea legs. It was one of the two.
Probably a bit of both.
Yeah. But no, that's why. But I don't know what he's doing today. So yeah, unfortunately, you have to
not transfer news.
Deal with me and you talking about it instead.
Making that as we go along.
In which case, we'll just go over to Ian Abrahams, who's watching a factual event: AC Milan against Barcelona. Barcelona. That's not going to go down particularly well. Welcome to Clips of the Week in Singapore. Here's Ian Abrahams.
And we played 10 minutes. Arsenal 0, AC Milan 0. Arsenal started with most of the possession, as you'd expect. Only one real effort on goal, though. Declan Rice, 20 yards out, just left of centre onto his right foot, curled it over the top of the crossbar. We've seen the first set piece of the season as well for Arsenal, a Declan Rice corner that was dealt with well by Fikayo Tomori at the back for AC Milan. Chelsea fans will remember him. And Loftus-Cheek, who's also playing for AC Milan in this game. But 10 minutes gone, it's Arsenal 0, AC Milan 0.
He has just texted me, by the way, the Crookmeister. He said that the barman on the boat yesterday asked him where he was from. He said, I'm from Portsmouth. The barman said, I know Portsmouth. Ronaldo scored a fantastic free kick there. Crook said, I've also scored there.
Oh, God.
And the barman said, OK, you can have free drinks for the rest of the trip.
Did he? All right. But probably didn't bank on the fact that Alex would drink them dry.
Yeah. Right, okay. When we come back in the next hour, should we go to Sam Ellon and find out what's going on at the Test match? Because England's still yet to make a breakthrough, Sam.
Yeah, that's right. We've only got 50 minutes to go until the lunch break. India been really, really watchful and really, really impressive in the opening hour and 45 minutes. 59 without loss. Jaiswal's got 20. KR has had a really good series at the top of the order, not out on 37. Chris Woakes was the pick and has been the pick of the England bowlers in the morning session. He bowled 8 overs with the new ball and was really unlucky not to pick up a wicket. He beat the outside edge of the Indian batsman on a couple of occasions. There was a big LBW appeal with the ball angling back into the left-hander. So India's batsmen have been watchful. We've maybe just seen in the last sort of 15 minutes Jaiswal, naturally an aggressive player, wanting to try and play a couple of shots. There was an aggressive cut shot off the bowling of Cast that took the outside edge and beat third slip. Then he tried to pull a short ball from Cast, which took the top edge and nearly picked out the fielder out fine leg. But if India can get to lunch without losing any wickets, they will be incredibly happy with their morning's work. Jaiswal's on 20, KR all 37. We've got 50 minutes to go until lunch. India 59 without loss.
You're listening to Matterface and Jordan. We're on talkSPORT with Selco Builders Warehouse. Check out this month's real deals at selcobw.com. Next, we're going to be tugging on your heartstrings. You know, you've got that player that's been around for absolutely ages, and just right at the end, maybe the club don't manage his exit properly. Do longer serving players deserve more at a football club? We'll do that next. It's talkSPORT. It's Sam Matterface alongside Simon Jordan. Now, Leeds drew 0-0 with Manchester United in Stockholm over the weekend. And on Saturday, the boss, Daniel Sparker, had his say on the future of long-standing striker Patrick Bamford.
And honest conversation with him, and was quite important for me because Patrick knows exactly how much I value him as a player. I've spoken several times about this, and that I would have preferred a completely fit Patrick Bamford in the last 2 seasons. He also knows how much I rate him also as a person, and for that I thought it was my duty to have a very honest and open conversation right now, straight away with him. Even I think it was the second day in pre-season when I got him into my office and I told him that he's not in my plans for the upcoming Premier League season, just due to the fact that he had really difficult years in the last years.
That's Daniel Farke speaking after the 0-0 draw with Manchester United, and he's talking about Patrick Bamford there. And Bamford's made 205 appearances for Leeds. He's scored 60 goals. He's been there for 7 years. He's been involved in 2 promotion-winning campaigns. He was brilliant in the first spell they had back in the Premier League under Marcelo Bielsa. He was absolutely terrific. He scored 17 goals.
On the cusp of England, didn't he, as well?
Yeah, well, he played for England, actually. Yeah. But he's got into double figures once since 2021. He's 31 years of age. He's not 38.
No.
He's played 17 times in the Championship last season. He didn't score a goal.
Yeah.
And whether or not you believe it's right or not for Farke to publicly criticise him and tell everybody that he's gonna care that he's got no future at the club, but ultimately, it's legitimate now that it's time for him to move on. And if you've watched them, it is just to the end of the road, I think.
Yeah, I mean, he's an interesting character, Patrick Bamford, isn't he? Because a lot's made of the background that he's very educated and quite erudite and very composed in his delivery. I remember seeing him at Palace when he was on loan at Palace early in his career. But he had one period of real success at Leeds, and that elevated him for a period of time because we were looking for alternatives to Harry Kane. But for the most of his career, he's not scored the goals that the position that he occupies should dictate. So I'm not entirely sure. I mean, obviously, you're suggesting that there might have been a different way for Daniel Farke to have couched the conversation or to have not advanced the notion that he's no longer wanted at the football club. But if he's asked, and I suspect he didn't. I expect he didn't pop up in a press conference and say, "Excuse me, can I just volunteer some information about Patrick Bamford?"
Personally, I mean, that's obviously we've been asked to discuss it, but my personal thought is he's being honest. He's just telling the truth about what's happening with this guy. This guy's not going to play in the Premier League next season. I don't think any Leeds player is going to or a Leeds fan is going to be surprised by that.
No, but he's also told the player first, I suspect. And one thing that players can cope with, because what is the problem with telling the truth? Some people would say it disadvantages the sale of an asset. So owners might want you to downsize the level of contempt you have for a player or dislike or what you think his acumen is by upsizing it, by saying he's good so that you can misrepresent it in the market so some other poor bugger will buy the player. In this instance, it's very clear that the player, for him, for the purpose that he has in mind for Leeds in the Premier League, is not fit for purpose. That doesn't mean he's not fit for purpose somewhere else. And I think that the more plain speaking and less double speak is probably beneficial. So the idea that players should be couched in a particular brand of courtesy extended to them, I think is a slightly sentimental and over-saccharine way of looking at it. People can cope with the truth as long as it's fair and delivered in a manner which is respectful.
Well, one of the reasons why you have this scenario which you praised earlier on about Sarina Wiegman and her the fact that the players are not complaining about their role is because she tells them very early what to expect and is very honest about it. And she's consistent about it. She doesn't change her mind halfway through. So I suppose in that regard it's good that people have clarity of what is going to happen to them. Now, Daniel Farke has also revealed in the last couple of days that the forward Matteo Joseph refused to go on the club's pre-season tour. We'll get Simon's take on that in just a second, but this is what Farke had to say about that.
Yes, nevertheless, he came to me and to us and said that he wants a new challenge and would like to have a move. He has also hinted that he wants and prefers a move to Spain due to his Spanish roots. And yes, obviously that was more or less his call, and I was okay. We just want players who are excited about the project to play with Leeds United in the best league in the world here in the Premier League.
So, in regards to your point about honesty and about being clear, there is a point there where he is basically telling the truth about what Joseph wants, and Joseph is telling the truth about what he wants. But is Farke being too open with the media in regards to these matters, which could essentially be kept in-house?
Yes, I mean you have to assess the judgment of a manager based upon the information that he's given or the manner in which he is allowed to give it out by the people that he works for. I'm assuming that he's allowed to say these things by the people that he works for, and they don't see any harm in it. The player's been honest. The players are allowed to leave football clubs. They are allowed to say, actually, I'd rather leave.
Yeah.
What I don't like is the notion that you can then suddenly down tools whilst you're deciding where you're going to leave to. I think you can say to a manager, I would prefer to leave, and I'd prefer to go to Spain. I'm sure you would. Right, you'll go where the market dictates you go. Right, if you want to leave, and no one wants you, you'll stay here. The fact of the matter is that if you then said to a manager, I don't want to go on a pre-season talk, it doesn't suit me, I think that should be the manager's choice. I think the manager should be able to say you come or you don't come, depending upon what I think is valuable to us. But I would imagine, albeit football managers do operate sometimes with a degree of autonomy, which isn't always the best, that he would have been allowed to say certain things or have discussed it with not Angus Kinnear, because Angus has gone now, but the CEO that's in place and the board that's in place, because this is an asset that they will be trying to capitalise on. And what you don't want to do is give people that are trying to buy the player a free range at lowballing you because they know the player doesn't want to be there in the first place. Albeit they'll know anyway because the agent will have already told them. So I think there's a benefit in being open and transparent. There's also a disadvantage because it becomes sometimes when you're not so open and transparent because it doesn't suit you to be so, people will say, well, hang on a second, your modus operandi, your stock in trade is to be open and transparent, and in this instance you're being guarded and opaque.
He looks pretty confident, though, Daniel Farke, and I wonder whether that's because of the investment that he's had this summer. And I was looking at the squad yesterday. They've signed 2 new centre-halves. They've got a new left-back. They've got Sean Longstaff, which seems like an astute signing. They've signed Nemecha on a free transfer.
Given his previous experiences of going up with Norwich and being given 2 and 6 and paying gobstoppers, he probably feels like he's landed a lottery.
Probably, but they do need players in that area of the field, that forward area.
Club Leeds.
And Joseph leaving and Bamford leaving means that they will need another person in that area. And I think
they'll get him, I suspect.
I suppose they will. Also, when we spoke about this briefly yesterday, everybody that they've signed is a giant. Because of the physicality that's required in the.
Well, that would be interesting because I talked about physicality, as I said to you yesterday, with Kieran McGinnis and Mark Ashton at Ipswich.
That was when you went to the fight, wasn't it?
Correct, when I saw Fabio Wardley. And I was talking to Kieran about what lessons have they learned from the Premier League and what do they think they were going to have to appreciate and deal with next time they go back up, if they do straight back, pass back up. And he talked about physicality. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, he didn't mean physical size. He meant the ability to be able to, in games, have a bench that they could go to that could change the direction of games, because they felt they were in certain games until later on in the game, and then a bigger side would come along with a better bench, change it when they couldn't match it. Now, Leeds now seem to be going in the direction of the land of the giants. We'll see how that plays out.
We will. Thank you very much for the last 3 days. Appreciate it.
Thank you, mate.
And enjoy the rest of the week.
Enjoy your vacation.
I will. I am actually finally going on a vacation, which is great. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much for your company too. H&J coming up next.